Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on episode 66 of the Cinema Geeks,
we discuss what films are on the upcoming schedule that was released from Sony.
We look at who might be cast as Robin Hood #1.
We react to the latest Deadpool trailer.
And in our main attraction, inspired by Pixels, we attempt to create our very own FilmTime Capsule.
All that and more coming up on episode 66 with the Cinema Geeks.
Welcome to episode 66 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your hosts, Optimus Solo. Joining me today, as always, is Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. And Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
Hello.
And we got a pretty special episode this week, doing something different for the main attraction. We'll get to that in a little bit, but as Dan said in the opening, we're kind of tying it into Pixels, but hopefully making it more entertaining than that movie apparently was. I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, but I have not heard good things. But before we get to do all that, we're going to go through the regular things, the box office, the news, and the trailer. So let's start at the box office by taking a look back at this past weekend. And we saw that Mission Impossible Rogue Nation came in at #1 with $55 million, a pretty good opening for Mission Impossible. Vacation, the other new film, came in at the 2 spot with just over $14 million. And then we had Ant-Man, Minions, and Pixels rounding up the top 5. If we look ahead to what's coming out this weekend here as we record this, we have the Fantastic Four, Ricky and the Flash, is that the name of that film?
Ricky and the Flash.
Ricky and the Flash. And we also have The Gift coming out. So either looking back at this last week at the box office, Dan, or looking ahead to what your prediction might be for next week, what are your thoughts as far as the box office world goes?
I guess the thing that kind of I looked at was the fact that Mission Impossible made like, what, $50 million or so, and people are like, wow, right, that did really well. It, second biggest for the franchise, and like Ant-Man made that like a few weeks ago, and people were like, wow, Marvel's really starting to lose it. So it's just kind of funny how, the differentiation between franchises when $50 million is bad for one and great for another, but that's the only thing that really caught my eye.
That is funny. Yeah, the worst performing Marvel film compared to the second best Mission Impossible, and
yeah,
it's a changing of the guards, folks. Marvel's done. What are your thoughts, kind of looking ahead to what you think might happen as we speak here, rounding out the rest of this weekend?
Well, I'm gonna maybe break from tradition and do a Rotten Tomatoes score because,
all right,
just looking at the box office, I feel like it's going to be kind of uneventful, and the fact that we're recording this later than normal, that. It's a little bit unfair, but I'm going to try to... For a movie coming out the 13th, I guess it would be The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I'm going to try to guess its Rotten Tomatoes score, and I'll say it's going to... I haven't dug the trailers, and I feel like it's coming out in August, which is a bad sign, so I'm going to say it ends up being rotten at 50%. It will be around its Rotten Tomatoes score.
Okay, so about a 50% for The Man from U.N.C.L.E. That's an interesting pick. The first person to venture into Rotten Tomatoes world. I am not brave enough yet to go there. I gotta do some more research beforehand. But I like that pick. I think that's an interesting one. Amanda, anything from this last weekend that surprised you, or do you want to get straight into your prediction for next week?
I'm a little surprised that Vacation was #2.
Yeah, because that did not get early word of mouth that was any positive whatsoever.
No, a little surprised on that, but as far as my prediction for next week goes, I'm not as cool as Dan either, and I'm not going to venture into the Rotten Tomatoes territory. I don't keep up with those enough. But I will predict that Fantastic Four is going to come in and swoop out The Vacation and drop it down to #3, and Fantastic Four is going to come in #2.
All right, I'm going to almost make the identical prediction, but say it a different way. And I'm going to predict that Mission Impossible remains at #1, which I think would fall in line with Fantastic Four coming in at #2. So we're, I guess, kind of predicting the same thing.
Cheater.
Probably taking the easy route because, like Dan said, it's going to be a pretty uneventful weekend at the box office. We have a plethora of films currently in the box office that are not very well received. If you go through, Fantastic Four is getting tanked at Rotten Tomatoes. Vacation got lambasted there. Pixels is getting terrible reviews. So, I mean, we got a lot of stuff out there. Honestly, the new one that's opening is probably getting the best review on Rotten Tomatoes, at least last time I checked, was somehow The Gift, which when I saw the early trailers for that, like way months ago, I didn't think that was a movie that anyone was going to take serious. And maybe I judged that prematurely because it is getting, last I checked in Rotten Tomatoes, it was like in the 80-90% range. Maybe it's dropped now that it's more people have seen it. But
I've seen that trailer 800 times. I'm so sick of seeing the trailer. Like, I don't even know if I want to see the movie now because I'm so sick of seeing the trailer.
Dan, you were going to say something?
It's at 92% right now, so I don't know if I've even seen a trailer. I guess, I don't know, for some reason I missed it, but I've not.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
For some reason, they played it like at every movie we've gone to this summer. And it started a long time ago, and it was like, oh, it's one of those where you see the trailer and you know it doesn't have that release date until like a year from now, and you're like, oh, that's not a good sign. We're about to see this a whole lot. But so we're taking the easy way out. Dan is venturing into the Rotten Tomatoes world and maybe start a trend. I might try to do that here in the upcoming weeks because we're getting into some interesting territory with film releases. So that does it for the box office for this week. Let's get into some of the news stories from the last little bit that made some headlines. We'll start here for what might be next for Eddie Redmayne. And the article is talking about the rumors that he might be attached to a role in a movie about the Wizard of Oz.
Frank L. Baum.
Yes. So Eddie Redmayne taking on the role of the author of The Wizard of Oz. Dan, what do you think? I mean, Eddie Redmayne is a hard one to kind of pin down right now. He's been up and down. So what do you think about that possibility?
I think it makes sense. After his less than successful role in Jupiter Ascending, I think he's looking for something maybe a little bit more prestigious, per se. So
yeah.
I know not much about the author, so I couldn't really tell you, but it kind of reminds me, I guess the first thing that came to my mind was like Finding Neverland with Johnny Depp, so I don't know if it would be something along those lines, but right. I think he's a legitimately good actor, and I think he'll bounce back. He just won the Oscar. Right. Jupiter Ascending wasn't the best film ever, but that was also made, how many years ago, and reshot, so I think there's a lot going on there that wasn't him, and I thought he was pretty good in Les Mis, so I think he, everyone has that performance they regret, so I think I'll be okay.
And it's hard to say how much of that was how he was directed to do it and how much of the rest of the film he was privy to know kind of the world that he was being thrown in. So not necessarily his fault that moment came out of nowhere as something that really didn't seem like it belonged. But I'm with you. I think he bounces back from that little hiccup, and he's had some good performances and some borderline great performances recently, so I don't think it's that big deal. I'm hoping that they can make it an interesting story and that the movie does it justice, but I don't think he has any issues playing that part. What about you, Amanda?
I think I want to see him as Newt Scamander in the new Harry Potter spinoff before I can really make a judgment on that. If it's going to be any tie-in to what is the movie Return to Oz?
Dorothy, or the one from a couple years ago? Yeah.
If it's going to be anything like that, I don't know. But if it's going to be more like what Dan said in like Finding Neverland, I feel like it could be a good story. So we'll see how he does as Newt Scamander before I can make any judgment.
All right. Other big news coming out of the Sony camp is they released their current schedule for the next couple years, and there were some interesting additions and things on that list. First of all, obviously you had stuff like Ghostbusters, and we've already talked about in previous months The Magnificent Seven, but some interesting additions, including a possible reboot of Jumanji, Bad Boys 3 and Bad Boys 4, and then the adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower to go along with stuff like Resident Evil 6, Uncharted, and a Barbie movie, I guess, and Underworld 5. Dan, what did you think about this slate of movies that they released?
Yeah, I think Sony... Jumanji reboot, I'm not really...
What?
I know. I like that movie, I like that game, I like the book, but I just, it's kind of sacrilegious. That's Robert Williams gone, and I don't know. To me, it just seems like Sony trying to find something, remake some franchise.
There was a lot of tweets out in the last couple of weeks about the idea of making a Jumanji reboot as well as an Aladdin film. Two films that obviously very much have Robin Williams attached to it. All of a sudden he dies and there's news about these films coming out. I don't know.
We're going to get a sequel to Good Will Hunting, and it's going to be awful.
We've already had a sequel, I think, 3 times under different titles. But what about the rest of the slate with the Bad Boys and the Stephen King film, etc.?
I'm actually kind of excited for Bad Boys. I don't mind those films. From what I'm reading, it doesn't seem like Michael Bay is completely locked in as director, which sounds weird to be like, wow, Michael Bay's not directing. I don't know if I'm excited then. But I think like the Bad Boys films do, like he does have a good kinship with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, and he's good at shooting action. I think that's something that has legitimate talent for. But those are the two films I think out of all the ones that they listed that I probably have the most interest in.
And Amanda, I'm guessing you have the most interest for Underworld 5 and Resident Evil 6?
Actually, I like the first few Resident Evil movies, but I just can't keep track of the later, like 4, 5, 6. I don't know.
All their names are like Apocalypse or Armageddon. It's like everyone is the end of the world.
The world's ending.
How many times can the world end? I just don't get it. But the Bad Boys franchise, I really dig. I love both those movies quite a bit. Martin Lawrence and Will Smith really just do it for me. I'm also pretty excited, like you said, for Underworld 5. I really do like that franchise as well. Jumanji, if I can see a little bit of what's going on, maybe I can get on board. I'm not sure yet, but as far as the other things that are on the list here, The Dark Tower we already kind of talked about, and I'd definitely be down for that. Everything else, we'll see. Barbie, as if it's a Barbie movie. Is it live action?
Hopefully not. Hopefully that's a typo. It's supposed to say something else. Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm all about seeing some more Bad Boys and seeing what they do with that. That'd be cool. I'm not really a huge fan of the original Jumanji, and so I definitely don't necessarily see the need for...
You didn't like Jumanji?
I didn't say I didn't like it, but it just wasn't something that I would be like jumping up and down like, let's see more of that universe.
I just feel like that's a movie that
It's nothing like the book. The book is like it's 15 pages long, so it's one of those where they have obviously expanded from what's on the pages, but... Yeah,
right.
I remember even watching the Jumanji Saturday morning cartoon show for a little bit, which was kind of weird, but yeah.
You are a Jumanji expert.
Yeah, it was right age range, I guess. I don't
know. This should be right up your alley, Amanda, with the next news story, and that's all about some more Harry Potter spin-off casting, and the newest person to join the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That's almost too long of a title there, is Colin Farrell. So what about the idea of him playing some type of early witch wizard person in this universe?
Which wizard person?
I'm going with wizard because he's a guy.
It's going to be a wizard.
Okay.
See my cup right here?
Yep.
I think that I'm definitely on board with Colin Farrell being cast. I like him. I think he's a really cool guy. And I remember watching... the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Mm-hmm. So, I've seen him in something that's a little bit more abstract, and I think it'd be cool to pull him into this world.
Dan, are you looking forward to this sequel / spinoff? I guess spinoff would be the right term for it, or do you think you've seen enough from Harry Potter? I know most people have positive reaction to the series overall.
I do really like the Harry Potter series. I guess if you're going to do it, I'm glad they're doing like a spin-off like this, which is so separated from the original that it's not like it's going to just be like Harry Potter in college years or something like that. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting, and I'm liking the caster they're creating. I think that's the one thing for all the Harry Potter films. They were really good at getting a lot of like really great British actors, which I think helped make them quite good films. So hopefully that'll continue.
Right, and like you guys said, this is going to be somewhat removed, taking place approximately 70 years prior to the events of the original franchise. So I think that's a good step in trying to definitely remove itself from that. And like you're saying, the cast so far is looking pretty good, and I can definitely see Colin Farrell filling a wizard role pretty easily. So I'm all about that. So another possibility for reboot would be the idea of creating a Dungeons and Dragons movie that they're saying. This has been talked about and tossed around seems like forever. But the idea here is that Warner Brothers and Hasbro have struck a deal to bring Dungeons and Dragons to the big screen. Talks about a little bit about some of the people might be signed up to write for it, etc. Obviously, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't need much of introduction as far as the role-playing game that is obviously one of the most successful if not the most successful type of its or game of its kind in history. And we had the Dungeons & Dragons animated series in the 80s, which was nothing like that, but I guess it had some of the same types of characters. I remember watching that growing up. So, Dan, what do you think about this becoming an actual live-action big-screen film?
I mean, the first one was so good. Why would you remake it?
Are you talking about the 2000...
Marlon Wayans, you know? Why not? Of course.
Oh, Lord.
No, I've never watched it, so I really can't say. I've never played Dungeons & Dragons. I mean, hopefully it doesn't kill my geek cred. I'm not that creative.
Not a point.
I mean, looking at the fact there's not really many fantasy films, with a Hobbit ending, hopefully, finally, and there would be. And I know there's a Warcraft film coming, but I think as for a genre that surely could use something. I mean, I think Dungeons and Dragons makes sense, so I'm okay with it on that end. I just hope it's just not another example of a board game gone wrong, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if they took it serious and they had, if they took it serious and had someone like of the caliber of what like Peter Jackson when he originally took on the Lord of the Rings or something like that somebody was going to actually put some passion into it and not just like throw something up to try to do like a quick money grab. I think they have something here. They definitely have a fan base that will go out and watch this. I have also never played Dungeons and Dragons the game. I mean, I know what it is, and I've seen similar games played and kind of know about them, but I've never played them myself. But there's definitely a legion of fans out there, and I think if they did it right, it would be cool. And they're saying possibility that if it was successful, you could have some more cartoon series and stuff like that. So could be a whole universe that we're getting tipped off into if they do it right. What about you, Amanda? What do you think?
Let's round it out and say I also have never played this game. I'm way too young, though, I think. I don't think it was big when I was young enough to want to play this. I guess I really can't say that. 'Cause
you're just too cool for school.
There's some 40-year-old guys right now playing in a basement somewhere together. But I feel like it's the sibling that's like, well, Warcraft got a movie, why can't I? I just don't. I can't get on board with it.
Wow. Harsh words for Dungeons and Dragons fans out there. Our former co-host, Fridley Sent, will probably respond to that.
Well, Matt can come at me.
Oh, man. We were just about to play a similar style role-playing game in the Star Wars universe at one point, but things prevented that from happening. That would have been fun. But we'll have to get the fans' reaction and the listeners on what you guys think of Dungeons & Dragons, the movie, and if you're excited or not. This one's great because we knew this was coming as soon as they had the news about 4 different studios trying to put Robin Hood movies out. We said just wait until the rumors start flowing in on those. And here we go this week. The first rumor here on the possible casting of the Robin Hood. Now, don't get confused here. This would be the Robin Hood for the Lionsgate film. And if you remember back when we talked about that, that is the one that's talking about Robin Hood Origins. So we're going down to the origin of Robin Hood, and the people being thrown about as possibilities would be Taron Egerton from Kingsman: The Secret Service, Jack Huston from Boardwalk Empire, Jack Rayner from Transformers: Age of Extinction, and Dylan O'Brien from The Maze Runner. Dan, are you familiar with any of those gentlemen, and do you think one fits the mold for Robin Hood, or could you really care less? Who are the 4 Robin Hoods that we get?
I'm going to go with I could really care less at this point. I'm not just the fact that these movies even haven't come out yet. I'm already kind of sick of the idea. Is not a good sign. At this point, I think anyone can kind of play Robin Hood. So many people have. So I can't muster any interest in this. I'll just go watch the animated movie. I think that's where I'll stick with. So.
Yeah, I'll watch the animated one, and then if I'm really not getting enough, I'll watch Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, and then I'll call it a day. Because it's literally, it says it's going to be an origin, but then it describes like the first scene from Prince of Thieves. Like Robin Hood returns from fighting in the Crusades and finds Sherwood Forest corrupt. Like, that is exactly how Prince of Thieves started.
As long as they can have a British accent, they're one step ahead of that film, so.
I mean, I like Taron Egerton and Kingsman: The Secret Service. I think Dylan O'Brien, possibly from Maze Runner, would be fine. I would probably stay away from Jack Rayner from Transformers: Age of Extinction, but maybe that movie's just making me paint him in a bad corner. But yeah, I mean, I guess it'll be interesting to see which 4 people get. They should get the same kid to play Robin Hood in all 4 different films from all 4 different studios and just really confuse the heck out of us. So
you can't have one with superpowers. What is that one?
I don't. Yeah, that's true. Oh man, Amanda, any interest on any of this stuff?
Yeah, I haven't been too harsh on this yet, and I'm not worn out on hearing anything about it yet.
Give it time.
There's still a ways to go, but as far as out of those picks, I would put Taron Egerton, just because he was awesome in Kingsman. He's definitely got a British accent, Dan, and I mean he's a cutie. I think it'll be a good a good take if it's him.
All right, so 1 vote for Taron Egerton, 1 vote for him or Dylan O'Brien, and 1 vote that all of these burn in a fire and don't actually come to fruition. So, all right. Next up, we have the idea that Jenna Malone will be playing Barbara Gordon in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Dan, because we needed more characters in that film, correct?
Yeah, we were running low, so why not? I mean, I think there's been, 4 or 5 characters that have appeared in a DC comic that are not in that movie, so here we go. Yeah. But, again, I think a lot of these are going to be small cameos in the background, and then once the actual, Batman movie comes out, and Superman, Wonder Woman, they actually would have more of a role. So, I don't know. Considering it feels like that film is pretty much finished production for the most part, I don't know what she'll be doing. I don't think it'll be a lot, like I said. I think it'll just be, here and there.
She's in an end credit scene.
Exactly. That could actually be it. It'd be something.
Amanda, any interests for additional characters showing up in this film, or do you just want to see the movie already and get over all the rumors of this person or that person appearing?
I just want to see the freaking movie already. That chick, Jenna Malone, I don't think I've seen a ton with her in it. I like Sucker Punch, but, I mean, all those characters were pretty, I wouldn't call them over the top, but they were a little bit cartoony or really stylized. So, I mean, I'm not really sure about her, so per se, but I'm definitely just ready to see this movie.
All right. And last up for the news for today is all about Tom Cruise. Obviously, he's been in the news and making the rounds with the promotional material for Mission Impossible. And we have ideas about a couple different sequels that he might be interested in. First of all, we already know that Jack Reacher is getting a sequel, so that is already on the schedule. But he was talking about possibly doing another Mission Impossible, and I guess that's not a surprise. Nobody should be surprised that there would be another Mission Impossible. But what was making the news was the fact that, unlike the other ones where there's been a substantial amount of time in between the films, that he was going to possibly jump into this one and start shooting next summer, he said on The Daily Show. So that would be a pretty quick turnaround, but he's not getting any younger. So maybe he is trying to squeeze in as many Mission Impossibles as he can before he's no longer able to play that role, if that ever actually happens with him. I don't know. I think he could probably be 80 and still play this role, right?
Scientology crap is just keeping him alive.
Yeah. He goes home and he's cryogenically frozen, and then I think that's pretty much what happens.
He's actually living in the real world of Mission Impossible and all their gadgetry.
He's got a freaking Lazarus pit in his basement.
And then along with that, he was talking about the idea of a sequel to Edge of Tomorrow. He is about it. He says he has a good idea for it that he thinks. He already pitched it to Doug Liman and Christopher McQuarrie, and he is also, obviously his idea revolved around both him returning and Emily Blunt. And Emily Blunt did not shoot it down. She just said she possibly needed a little bit more time before she'd be ready for it. So if he's doing Mission Impossible 6 and Jack Reacher 2 and all these other films, maybe it will get squeezed out in the scheduling. But Dan, which one would you be more excited for, Edge of Tomorrow sequel or the next Mission Impossible? I
really liked Edge of Tomorrow, don't get me wrong. I thought it was one of the better summer blockbusters last year, but I wonder if that format's going to work for a sequel, and if they don't do that format, do they do something different so it's completely new? So I don't know. I wonder if maybe that's just best off left alone. I would be fine with another addition to the Mission Impossible universe. I've enjoyed the film so far, especially the last few we've been getting. And the thing is, though, when you look at Mission Impossible, they've almost always said this. We're like, we're going to start making this movie in the next year or two, and then, it gets delayed. So it's been kind of universal, but like you said, with Tom Cruise getting up there, there's got to get a point where he can't hang on to things anymore. So
he can't run like he used to.
So maybe, but if you're going to ask me which one to choose for, I'd probably go with a Mission Impossible over Edge of Tomorrow, mostly because of what I mentioned.
Well, see, in the Edge of Tomorrow sequel, Tom Cruise will show up, but he'll be a bad guy, and then they'll just keep their fingers crossed that nobody makes any Terminator connections. and just kind of flip-flop of what Arnold did in those two films. But, yeah, I mean, I think they're both interesting. I'd actually be down to see both of them. I think you're right, though. It's a lot more risky trying to fit in a sequel to Edge of Tomorrow and somehow make that work. And I would hate for them to do anything that, not that it could really take away from Edge of Tomorrow, but I'd want it to be at least on par with that. I'm probably more intrigued by that idea, but it seems like the safer bet with the Mission Impossible. They seem to know what they're doing no matter how many directors they cycle through there. So that seems to be working. So I'm all for seeing both of them, though. Amanda, what about you?
I think if I had to pick, I'd probably say Edge of Tomorrow based on kind of the level of boredom that I had with this last Mission Impossible. So yes, I would definitely see both of them, but if I had to choose, I'd pick Edge of Tomorrow.
All right. So that does it for the news. You'll have to let us know which one you're more interested in, Mission Impossible 6 or Edge of Tomorrow 2. Getting into some trailers, we've had a lot that have been released since the last time we talked about trailers, so we're not going to get into all of them, but we will put links to all of them on the website. Dan, looking down the trailer list, we got stuff like Hunger Games and Freeheld and Deadpool, Everest. Which one strikes your fancy? Which one strikes your fancy out of those in either a good or bad way? It doesn't have to be one of the ones I mentioned.
Actually, I'm going to go with one the night before, which is the Seth Rogen JGL movie. The reason being, it's coming from the same guy who brought us 50-50, and I had really high hopes for this movie because I love 50-50 and seeing team up again with the same people. But the trailer really underwhelmed me. I just, in the sense that 50-50 seemed to be, about something. It had that humor, but it wasn't just kind of the same old, same old. The trailer just felt like your typical Seth Rogen drug comedy, and I'm hoping it's more than that. I hope there's actually more to it than what the trailer leads on, but I was overall really underwhelmed by that trailer.
Is that a film that you were aware of when we were doing our most anticipated list, et cetera, at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it was on my list. I forget where exactly. It didn't have a title at the time. But I was looking forward to it mostly because of 50-50 and even Warm Bodies, which I thought was a movie that was way better than it should have been. So, but that, I don't know. Like I said, the trailer doesn't always do film justice, but I was hoping for more.
That one must have slipped past me when I was doing my research, because I, for some reason, forgot everything about that was even being made until I saw the trailer, and I was like, where's this? Why haven't I heard about this? But yeah, I think it was a hard one to kind of come down on one way or the other on the trailer. I wasn't sure what to make of that one. I'm interested because it's JGL and Rogen, and I'm still, especially Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I'm a big fan, so I'll wait and still probably give that one a chance. Amanda, what did you think of that trailer, or what's your pick for one you want to talk about?
For all the same reasons you guys said, I dig this movie that's going to come out, and I'm excited for it. But as far as like the connection to 50-50, I haven't seen that, so we'll have to get that and do a little research before the night before it comes out. I think my pick for a yay is got to be the Hunger Games. I'm definitely ready for this last installment to come out. I'm excited.
All right. Dan, are you as excited about Hunger Games?
Probably not as excited, but I thought this trailer was so much better than the one they released before this, which I thought was really just kind of bland. But I actually thought this one was pretty good. It had me a lot more excited than I was, and the idea of them invading with the different traps, I thought that was kind of cool. So looking forward to it. I've enjoyed them for the most part, except for the last one I thought was kind of just a little bit of a drag. But, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that it can at least pick up and finish it off. And, I mean, it's going to be Philip Seymour Hoffman's last film, so I guess it's got that going for it.
There you go. Man, I thought for sure you guys would pick a couple different ones. I shouldn't have thought that for Amanda, but that leaves a whole bunch of them that I'd like to talk about. But I guess if I have to go with one, first I'll cheat and say quick nod for Freeheld, and let's hope that Julianne Moore brings home the Oscar for that, and not at all because of any connection to my team on the Fantasy League. But that one seemed like it had some Oscar-type material going on there that they seem to like to love that type of content. But if I had to pick one, I guess I'll go with Everest. That was one that was on a lot of people's list for most anticipated going into the year, and I thought that trailer looked pretty interesting, looked pretty intense. It's got a pretty huge cast involved. I can't believe that there hasn't been I mean, there's been films like this, I guess, but there hasn't been one that seems to be this big of a film and project that they're doing with this one, and kind of the stakes and the budget seem to be pretty high on this. So I'm definitely intrigued by this one. It looks like it could be a pretty wild ride, and it seems to me it's in the same vein as like what you would get with Perfect Storm or Twister or some of those other storm movies or like Disasters at Sea and stuff like that. But for me, given the fact that it's about climbing Mount Everest, it almost comes across with more believability just right out of the gate. Not that those other ones aren't believable, but it seems like sometimes they stretch things a little bit. And I don't know, I'm interested in Everest. I don't know what you guys' level of interest is. Amanda, you saw the trailer. What do you think?
I think that it does have a pretty big cast, but I don't think it focused in the trailer on one specific character or actor or actress, whatever you want to say there. And I'm kind of glad that they did that. I think it's going to be more about the unit going through what it does than just like an individual. So I think it definitely looks intense, and I think it's going to be a thrill ride.
Dan, I think you had this somewhere on your list for most anticipated. I don't remember exactly where.
Yeah, I did, and I don't remember exactly where either, so there you go. But yeah, I'm definitely interested, and I like the trailer. It looks like a really solid-made adventure film, and again, similar to something we haven't really got in a while. I think the last one that comes to mind is like The Grey, like survival film of that nature. So, and like you said, the cast is pretty intense. And actually, I didn't realize, I knew the story that it was talking about because there was actually, I think there was either an HBO documentary or a 30 for 30 or something on it. So the bad part is like, I kind of know the story going in, which can affect your viewpoint either way. But it's got, Jake Gyllenhaal, so I hope it does well.
There you go. Some other great trailers out there that you guys might want to comment on. We got Deadpool, obviously, with another trailer. You had, what was the other one I was thinking of? Spotlight with Michael Keaton and Mark Ruffalo seemed pretty intriguing, but you'll have to take a look at those on the website. Watch those trailers and get back to us on which ones you're interested in or which ones you think are more of a dud trailer. Dan, any other ones that you wanted to mention before we go out on any of those? Any comments on Deadpool?
Yeah, it looks good. It looks like looks exactly what I want a Deadpool movie to be, so I'm excited for that.
Saw some article on, I think it was HitFix or something like that, and it was like 6 reasons why the Deadpool trailer was terrible or something like that, and that's just like, stop.
It's just one of those things. It's like, everyone likes it, so here's me not liking it. Click on here. Please click.
Right.
Yeah.
Click on 6 different pages of reasons that are terrible. Exactly. About why this is bad.
It's one reason, one page for the title of it, one page for the reason of it, and then one page for the image. So.
Right, and then click through on each reason. Amanda, what do you think about Deadpool? You still excited?
Bro, totally, yes. And I thought the pre-trailer was pretty cool.
So far, I got to say, I think everything about the marketing for this movie has been genius.
Yeah, it's been...
Like everything's been on point. All the little teasers they've done, all the interviews they've done, they're not only being creative about it, but they're also nailing the character at the same time. And it just seems like somebody that knows what they're doing is in charge of what happens when with this film. So hopefully it doesn't get our expectations so high that it's something that it can't live up to. But so far, I think everything they've done is right on that front. So. All right, that is our quick version of the news and the trailers. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, you're going to want to stay tuned because we got something that I think is going to be pretty interesting, pretty fun, and possibly lead to some debate and some heavy discussion here. We're going to try to create a film time capsule, and we'll get more into what that means right after the break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions.
We are simply 3 friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
Hey guys, it's Optimus Solo and
Hard Candy Mandy.
And we just wanted to let you guys know about another podcast out there that we both think you would all enjoy.
It's one of both of our favorite shows to listen to, and it's none other than the True Bromance Podcast.
True Bromance is a movie podcast hosted by longtime friends Hyro and Barry, and if you like to smile, laugh, and just be genuinely entertained while listening to movie talk, then this is definitely the right show for you.
Each week, the guys break down a recently released movie, and not only do they tie in the movie that week to the beers that they are drinking during the show,
but they also tie it into a real fun top and bottom 5 list associated with that movie.
It's a blast hearing both sides of these lists, and it definitely makes them unique amongst all other movie review podcasts.
So we definitely want to recommend all of you guys to go check out their show. Just search out the True Bromance Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and all other podcast platforms. And if you listen via iTunes, do us a favor and leave them a 5-star review. And don't forget to let them know that the Cinema Geeks sent you.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk.
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing.
Download this show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
All right, thanks for sticking with us here on episode 66 of the Cinema Geeks, and it is time for the main attraction. And what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be trying to create a film time capsule. This idea is inspired partially by the film Pixels. It was an idea that we had early on in the year, actually, because the first trailer for Pixels and the information was all about them basically creating this, I guess you could say, time capsule that was filled with different video games and stuff like that, and obviously those are what comes after the guys in Pixels. Again, I don't think any of us have seen the film, so we're not going to get too much into any correlation to the actual movie, but we thought if we were to switch things and instead of video games have a time capsule that was only filled with movies, where would we go with that? How would we come up with our list, and what movies would we put in there? So what we decided to do, and we're going to do this a couple different ways here, we are going to try to assemble a time capsule full of 10 films. And we're going to do that by going around the table here, so to speak, and we're each going to give a couple of nominations, and the others will react to that. And, you know, obviously if we have something that's on all 3 of our nomination lists, it's going to automatically be in the time capsule. You know, if it's something that's on 2 of ours, it'll at least pass that round. And if it's something that only one of us has, depending on the reasons for it, it might get left behind. But before we get to all of that, we will go over our reasons and our rationale of how we came up with our nominations, and hopefully through all of it, we're able to come up with a final 10 films for the time capsule. Also, just so we don't feel, so none of us get our feelings hurt and feel like our list is not as well represented on the total list, I'm speaking of me, obviously, we're going to put all of our individual time capsules on the website for you guys to vote on which ones you think would be the best. And the idea here is kind of I'll kind of go into my criteria and what I was looking for, and Dan and Amanda can kind of talk about theirs too, because we'll probably all have a little bit of a different angle towards this. But my main thing was, if we are, and this is possibly coming a little bit from the historian aspect of my background, but looking at if we were to provide a time capsule that some type of alien race or some type of other life form would eventually come into contact with, and our planet was gone or not able to be ventured to, what would give them the best idea of, number one, why we make movies and why movies are made and kind of the art of films in general, as to why that's a medium that we enjoy so much. But number two, what would represent, what would give them the best look at what the human race was or what life on Earth was and that type of thing, and kind of give them the best snapshot of life as we know it. So that's kind of my angle and how I went about it. So I tried to come up with what I wanted to represent in that time capsule, and then I found different movies that I feel fit that message that I was trying to give, each aspect of that, and then I'll try to narrow it down to an actual pick for each one of those. So that'll make more sense as I get to it. So if I had message A that I wanted to send, I kind of came up with 2 or 3, 4 movies that I thought fit that message, and then we'll kind of narrow it down from that for my nominations. Dan, how did you tackle this? Because I know this is a complicated journey and task we kind of set out for each other.
Yeah, I kind of had two parts with it, or two sides of my brain. One was thinking if these were, like, say, the 10 movies that existed ever. So thinking of movies that represent the art of cinema to be snooty, but also just one that kind of explains what it means to be human, and explains kind of our emotions and what we value in different ways. So ones that kind of are about. So that's kind of, some of my choices have both of those. Some are more heavy than others. Some are like, this is a good example of this type of aspect of a film, while this one is a good representation of this portion of humanity. So it is kind of a give and take in that aspect.
And hopefully by all of us coming kind of with these slightly different but similar angles, we'll be able to kind of have the most well-rounded time capsule. I know something that was hard for me was my brain immediately wanted to do not the easy thing, but kind of the natural thing and pick the best of each type of genre of film. I don't know if that's something you guys struggled with or not, dealing with, should we have X number of genres represented, and should we just pick the best example of each one, or do we kind of tie more into the human element? Amanda, how did that play into, what kind of criteria did you come up with in kind of forming your nominations?
I really didn't limit myself to, focus on genre or anything to actually do with film. I think that I focused more on what did I get out of this movie, and is it something that wholeheartedly represents some part of being human or humanity that's definitely showcased in full.
All right. Anything else, any other disclaimers or anything that anybody wants to get out there before we start tackling this crazy ride, Dan?
It's impossible to make this list and not be disappointed in the sense of movies you're leaving off, because you're legitimately thinking movies in general and trying to just squeeze it into a list. So, yeah, if you're like, this should be included, yes, that probably should be included. But you gotta cut it off someplace.
Well, and also something to remember, this is not necessarily, I don't think any of us created a list that's our 10 favorite movies.
No, I did not, or this isn't what I would say are the 10 best movies ever made. I think some are arguably within, respective, considering great films, some may not be, but it was just kind of, like I said, a combination of both.
Right, and the other thing, like he's saying, there's a billion movies that have been made, it seems like, and we're trying to pick 10. So obviously there's going to be a slew of great films that are going to be left off, but hopefully those films that you guys are disappointed that aren't there, hopefully there's something similar to those films that we do include, or something along those lines. So Dan, Amanda, go ahead.
I have a disclaimer.
Gotcha, disclaimer.
Don't hate on my list, because it's not snooty or refined or classy in any way. So
all right,
keep your hate to yourself.
Nobody ever hates on your picks or your list,
except for Tammy. Everybody hates Tammy.
Oh man! All right, Dan, do you want to get us started?
Sure. And I guess disclaimer: don't hate on mine if it is snooty. I try to get a balance, but. Yeah, so for my first pick, I guess I'll go with, I would probably fall in the line of classical film, but I think it's the reason I chose it is because I feel like it's one of those films that no matter who you are, you watch it, and there's probably some character that's really you're going to be able to relate to, and I think that's kind of what I looked in this, like the ability to relate to a movie. It also is probably one of the most famous movies of all time. It's influential, and it's for its time, a pretty good technical achievement in that The Wizard of Oz. It's classic Hollywood style, a story that is certainly timeless, and I figured there's a lot in there that you certainly can get out of, and I think it represents a lot, and it's just your classic hero story and larger than life characters is like legitimately one of those movies that has not quite made it anymore today. So that's why I went with Wizard of Oz.
And I think that's a good rationale for that. That's an interesting pick. I think it fits into maybe potentially some of the stuff that one of the categories that I might nominate, so it possibly could take one of those movies' places. I don't have it on my list as a nomination, but I don't have anything against it being in the discussion. I think it, like you said, it represents an era. It represents a kind of that classic filmmaking, but it also represents a couple other elements that I'm not going to give away quite yet, but I'll tell you about it when I get to my nomination. What do you think about that one, Amanda?
I think it's a solid choice. I think it also represents kind of like the heart of America. I mean, Midwest, homegrown feel, and also having the big dreams that we tend to have. You know, the grass is always greener on the other side kind of feel, and the realization, you know, that humans tend to have, that what we have is what we need, and being happy with that.
All right, so great way to start it off. Dan, did you want to do another one right now, or do you
Sure,
want to
I'll do my second one, because it kind of, this one's a cheat, and I'll explain my reasoning, and I think it goes well with Wizard of Oz, so, and I'm going to guess neither, I shouldn't say neither, but I wanted a movie about movies. I think that's kind of a key, like one that kind of explains in legitimate detail why people love film, or why someone might love film. And there was two movies that I kind of considered for this. The first one was Singing in the Rain, which is a movie about people who make movies and kind of the reasons they do it. And it gets into a lot. It's a classic musical too, very, a comedy, lighthearted, but legitimately really well made, some really great dance choreography, it's legitimately a huge show. The other one was Cinema Paradiso, which is a movie about a boy falling in love with movies and the effect that it had on him. And I think that's something like, I think would be a key thing to see, to be like, okay, why are these things I'm watching important? I think Cinema Paradiso is kind of in explaining that. It gets into a lot regarding film, and there's a lot more to it than just that idea of falling in love with film. It's also this friendship that occurs. So I was kind of struggling between both of those, and since I kind of had Wizard of Oz, I figured Singing in the Rain and those have some similarities, so I ended up going with Cinema Paradiso, since again, it's more of the fan aspect and the person observing it rather than the person making it.
All right. It's interesting because you're already touching on another type of concept that's on my list. You probably have two way better examples of what I was going for with the one that I put on there. But I definitely have no problem putting something on our list that kind of speaks to why people enjoy film, whether it be why people enjoy making film or why people enjoy going to the films. Have you seen Singing in the Rain, Amanda?
Not the whole thing.
Okay. But I definitely understand where you're going about for that one. And again, I think that's good enough to keep it in the discussion for now. Let's go to Amanda next for your two first nominations.
I think I will go with a couple also in the same realm of each other almost, like Dan. My first pick is going to be Seven from 1995. And I chose this because it shows the human capacity to use religion as motivation to do really terrible things. I think that there's a lot of disturbing things in this movie, but it definitely is an exaggerated way to show how we as humans can use religion and warp it to our own, needs. And I think my second pick is almost not really in the same vein, but just as morbid maybe. And this is Final Destination from 2000, and that just shows how we as humans kind of put stock in fate, and how death is an inevitability. And I think some people also believe that it's predetermined. So I think that's a kind of a heavy theme in humanity.
Dan, reactions to those picks?
It's funny because I was actually thinking I wanted a movie that covered religion too, and I couldn't really figure one out. But it's funny thinking of the negative side of it, which it didn't even come to my mind. Thinking of how it's used for kind of evil in the sense of Seven. So I actually really like that pick. Final Destination, surprising. I did not expect that to be mentioned. Those are really. It's funny looking at that franchise and like how it evolved to legitimately. Let's come up with really creative ways of killing people, but I think it, like she does mention, it does cover death and our attempt to try to avoid it. So in that aspect, I would agree with her that it does at least have a theme that is important. I might have a movie on my list that I think does something similar that
You trying to trump my pick already?
No,
Dan?
I'm not trying to trump your pick. I would say no. Maybe it's by my own bias but I would say I really like the idea of Seven. I think that's actually a unique choice that I was not expecting.
I'm not talking about all the weird sequels to Final Destination.
Yeah, I know. Just the first one.
The first one.
Yeah.
No, I think it's something I didn't consider either, and I think that's a decent idea because how many films do we have that center around somebody trying, even in fantasy worlds or adventure movies where someone's trying to escape death, someone's trying to find that key to immortality, the fountain of youth, or whatever it might be. So, I mean, I think it is something that humans dwell on, possibly fear in some respects or in some instances. So I think the whole idea of trying to cheat death, or the fact that it might be coming for you no matter what, or etc., is an interesting concept to consider. But yeah, I didn't even think about that one. All right, for my first two, I'm going to kind of go in the same realm, because I wouldn't necessarily say that we'd have to have both of them, but I think one of them possibly would be beneficial, because I think they show about three different things. Most of my picks, I was trying to get two different things out of them, and my first two, I think, hit three of them. And number one, they both represent the animated style of film. So they're both going to be an example of not just live action, but more of the art of animation, etc. The other one being that they're both obviously directed towards kids, and kind of explaining or giving maybe a message about how kids think, or what kids would enjoy, compared to maybe some of our other ones, which are going to be a little bit more mature. And I had two of them that came to mind that kind of had a third theme. The first one, and this will give it away, but the first one deals with the theme, kind of, I guess, in the same realm of not cheating death, but all about the whole circle of life, and, from the beginning to the end, and all of that comes in between. So that would be The Lion King was the first one that I was considering. And obviously Disney is a big presence in film, and that would be an example of one of the Disney films. The other one, instead of kind of going with the whole circle of life aspect, I think deals with the idea of giving the possibility that some type of outside life form would be able to understand why humans, the human aspect of emotions, of memories, of kind of how we develop personality, and kind of how we cope with the different feelings that we have, not just at a kid level, but throughout life. And so I know it's a recent pick, so maybe some people wouldn't do that, but that would be Inside Out from this year. So those were kind of the two films that I was thinking that could both represent the animation and kids film aspect, but also kind of give a message about humanity overall. So I'll stop rambling, Dan.
Well, I'm not surprised by the Lion King pick. I figured that was coming up today. I had a feeling. I don't have Lion King on it, but I do have a Disney film that I'll talk about. Very surprised by Inside Out, in the sense that I thought Pixar would come up, but it's not the one that came to my mind that I thought we would hear about. But I think, if we didn't mention genre, that's something we didn't really consider, but I think it is something that is worth mentioning, and I do have it as a factor in some of my picks. So besides just what you mentioned, I think it would be vital to have at least one animated film, and I think arguably I would consider it the best, or at least within the consideration for the best animated film, with The Lion King. So I think I would certainly feel that's worthy. Inside Out, It's a little too soon for me. I did really like that movie, but that's the only thing that's holding me back from it.
Yeah, and the only thing that kind of made me decide to put that one on the list was more so about just kind of some of those themes that there were. I thought it was a decent way to illustrate for someone else how we feel and how we emote and how memories or personalities are kind of come up with for humans. So that was the only kind of reason that it pushed it over the edge, because obviously if I was picking, what type of animated films that I like the most or that I think are the best, I don't know if I would be ready to put that in the discussion yet. And Lion King's not my favorite Disney film of all time either. It's up there, but it's not my number one. But I'm not necessarily sticklers for one of that it has to be those two, but like you said, I think maybe an animated film that kind of shows that style of filmmaking, and from the kids aspect, as well as maybe has a message tied into it, I would be in favor of a film somewhere in that realm being included. Amanda, what do you think?
I actually think Inside Out is a really good pick, because I'm going to just ignore the genre, because I'm not really focusing on that, so I'm not going to focus on it, even though you're focusing on it with your pick. But I do think Inside Out is a great way to showcase emotion and memory, thought processes, what we go through as far as like development goes, and all that, as far as what we need to show to other life forms or what have you. I think that's a really awesome pick. As far as Lion King goes, I think that's tops on a lot of people's list. And The Circle of Life and Nature, also very, very prevalent, and I think that's a good pick.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata. I'm not going to dwell too much on the animation, but I'm not going to reveal how many animated films I have on my list just yet.
All right. Dan, what's next on your list of nominations?
All right, so my next two, I guess I felt, to go with, I wanted a documentary. I know not everyone loves documentaries, but I do. It's honestly, like, sometimes I'm feeling like I'm enjoying documentaries more than actual general films these days, but I didn't know which one to go with. It's kind of hard. So I'm thinking one emotion or one aspect of humanity I wanted to get was the idea of hope and the how hope can lift you up, but also it can kind of crush you, or people can use that hope for their own advantage. And I think one that represents that is actually the documentary Hoop Dreams, from a Steve James documentary from the 90s, which chronicles the life of three African-American teens in inner-city Chicago and their life story. So I think it works in that aspect as like a time capsule in the sense of a time and place during that era, and the idea of trying to take something, even if it's just basketball, and use it as a tool to get out of a really horrible situation. It's a very emotional documentary in that aspect, but you also see how those people are kind of misused, or how schools, in a way, take that and take their talent to the basketball court and then maybe don't do the best things with it and don't really actually give them the education that they deserve, or if they're almost like used as a, the idea of student athlete becomes a question. So that's why I went with Hoop Dreams. Again, just the idea of hope there. My next pick was more on the aspect of the art of cinema and the art of making a movie, and this movie has a lot of what I was looking for. I feel like if these are the 10 films, you need something that can do this. First is build character and represent character development. And to me, in my money, one of the films that does that better than anything is Alien, the 1979 Ridley Scott directed film. And the character of Ripley, I think, is one of the best movie characters ever, especially if you look at where she started and where she came from. She doesn't start as your main star. She's almost a side character. You see her build up into this icon, and I think that's a good example of how you can make a character and make you care about someone that maybe originally you didn't. And also, it's just a master of suspense and thrills. And two, it'll show them that we don't mess with aliens and we can kick the crap out of them in that aspect. So maybe Alien should be the better aspect for that one, but so that was my next pick. So two different ideas there. So I had Aliens and Hoop Dreams.
I like those. I like both the rationale for both of them. I think with Hoop Dreams, it covers not just the idea of hope, covers documentaries. It covers, like you said, a slice of a certain time and place in our history. So I like that, and I kind of see what you're saying with Alien, for sure. Amanda, what do you think?
I'm not going to say too much on the Alien pick. I may or may not have my own Alien type pick. I can't really comment too much on the documentary The Hoops that I haven't seen, but I mean, I think that sounds like a solid choice to represent what you're trying to represent there.
All right, Amanda, what do you got next?
All right, I'm going to lighten it up a little bit for my last picks.
You're not going to go 7 in Final Destination? More death and destruction?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm going to take it into 2007 with Ratatouille. And I think that this just shows how deep friendship and the love of food can go and what it does for the soul. I think that was a really great movie, a feel-good movie. Makes me hungry every time. But I think that's one of my favorite movies that just shows how you can love food and how that can tie into so many other aspects of your life. My next pick is a 1984 choice, Footloose, and that's nice. This is going to show the importance of music and culture, and how, again, that's something that's good for the soul, and how this is it's kind of embodied through the youth. So I think those are some pretty solid, happy choices.
I know you made one individual happy with your Ratatouille pick. If it's anything like his love of food that he represented with his number 1 pick from last year in Chef. So I think Hyro will appreciate that.
I was going to say, it's no Chef, Hyro.
And I also just kind of thought about the value of music. I have it represented in a different film that we'll get to later, but I can definitely see a reasoning for Footloose. Dan, what do you think about food and music?
Well, I figured, if you're going to have 10 films, we got to have at least one with Kevin Bacon. So, to be fair. Yeah, Footloose. At least it's not the remake. So that's good. But music that's funny. I didn't even think of music. That's a good point. That is something that should be represented. And Ratatouille. I mean, in a way, you could just let's just send all the Pixar films except for Cars, and
that'll cover everything.
Yeah, and we'll be good. So
our cars don't talk. We promise.
No, they don't. And they're the cable guy is not an actual car. We promise. But so I like I said, that's a good idea. I'm kind of regretting that I didn't even think of something for that. So very cool.
It becomes hard because we come up with all these different great concepts that should be included, and then we figure out that we can only include 10 of them. So, but I can definitely see food and music being important to our culture. So for my next two picks, I went animated and a little bit more fun and light, I guess, with my first two. So I'll take it the opposite direction with my next two. Regardless of your own beliefs, I think obviously religion plays a big part of the human aspect, and from the earliest time, trying to figure out why you're here, and is there some type of person in charge or creator or anything like that. So I thought I should probably include something on my list that had some type of ability to talk to the religious aspect of our society, and for that pick I went with Passion of the Christ. I don't know if that's wrong, setting that up there and having them watch that and think that we're all some pretty twisted people, I guess, but I thought that at least somewhat represents how religion plays a major aspect in our culture. So that's what I went with my first one, and to keep it on that deep level, I guess. And my second one for this round, I tried to come up with a film not only that was good or great, I guess I should say, not only possibly some of the best films of all time, but something that in my mind could represent, in general, instead of focusing on a specific aspect of the human condition and human nature, something that could be a little bit more general and, for me, speak to both, at the same time throughout the movie, the best of humanity as well as the worst of humanity. So I was looking for a film that could represent both extremes to show how bad humanity can be and how good humanity can be at the same time.
Does this movie take place in a strip club?
No. So I had a couple different ideas. I wouldn't necessarily be torn as far as which way it goes. I could see either one of them, but the first movie that came up in my head to represent both the best and the worst of humanity was Schindler's List. That would obviously represent the will to survive and what you'd be able to do, as what Schindler did for everybody, but also the worst of humanity, which doesn't need to be explained. But I could see this being done in Saving Private Ryan, in 12 Years a Slave, Swing Kids, 50-50, Life is Beautiful. I mean, there's a bunch of them that represent kind of the best and the worst at the same time. But Schindler's List was the one that I kind of narrowed down to include in this round. So, Dan, what do you think about those two?
I really like the Schindler's List idea. I think, like you said, it does show you a good kind of the worst of us and the best of us. The Passion of the Christ, I guess, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of that movie. I find it's torturous in the wrong ways, and I don't.
That was my problem in including it, was we would send the wrong message at the same time.
And I guess like I don't feel like I get. I don't get like the unlike with Schindler's List. Like I feel like it doesn't shine a light on the other side, kind of the positive aspects. It just felt like as they said, like a snuff film, a little bit too much. So that one I would be a little bit hesitant in including, but I think Schindler's List represents exactly what you're going for.
All right, that brings up Amanda. You got some comments on either of those, Passion of the Christ or Schindler's List? I think that's too strong to include.
As far as Passion of the Christ, not. I mean the violence or the torture or whatever aside, I think that kind of almost like in the same realm as my pick with religion. It's a one religion. The only thing that I could think of between the two of those is it's too focused on just Christianity. It's not religion as a whole. So that's my only drawback. I mean, that includes my pick with 7 as well. But as far as that goes, I'm not too concerned with like the whipping and all that good stuff. What was your other pick?
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. That was one that I thought about putting on my list as well, but I knew that one of you guys would have it on there, so I opted out. I think it's also a great choice. I wanted to kind of do a Holocaust pick as well, but
we're demented.
Yeah, I opted out since I knew one of you guys would have it on there.
All right, Dan, what's up next for your group?
There's a lot. It's like I know they're going to have a Holocaust movie, so.
Why would we all want to include a Holocaust film when we show people what the human race is about?
So I will. My next pick, it's kind of when you said the good and bad, and this one is to be kind of sappy. I wanted a movie that was about love, but one that showed again both sides of love, the positives, the negatives, the ways it can affect you. Also, I wanted a movie that kind of shows the strength of dialogue and how that can work and how important that is. Same thing with like cinematography. And a movie that came to mind is a movie that, if you look at the top quotes of all time when it comes to movies, it has like 10 of them, and that's Casablanca. Honestly, looked at as one of the best American films ever made. But I think too, it shows how love can affect you in different ways, and how sometimes love is just letting go, to be corny. My next pick, kind of along love too, is regarding. I wanted something that kind of represents the parent-child relationship. What that means, because that is a huge part of who we are. Is that relationship between people, whether it's grandparents or uncles, what have you. Just the idea of family. And 2 movies came to my mind for that. One is my first animated, and one was an animated film, and it's not my favorite Disney film, but I do really like it, and that's Dumbo. And I think just one scene comes to mind, and it's the scene with Dumbo's mom with her trunk, like holding Dumbo, like singing along. It's so sad and bittersweet, and it's so much. And it just also goes into like overcoming obstacles and kind of proving people wrong when you're different. So I think that's a big part of who we are too. The other movie was Bicycle Thieves, which is a classical film about basically how important something that's not very important to others can be, the idea of just a bike getting stolen and how that can completely change your life. And it's also a great father-son relationship in there. I ultimately decided to go with Dumbo, mostly because, again, I don't have any other animated movies on my list. And I don't know. If you're going to have one scene that best represents it, is the one I mentioned. So, also, it has underage drinking and racist stereotypes, so it is everything you need in a classic Disney animated film. So.
That's very true. I think I have a couple films in my next round that are going to speak to the same things that you just spoke to, and I'm going to save my thoughts until I get to my picks and react to yours at the same time. But Amanda, what do you think about Casablanca as far as showing the love aspect, or Dumbo as far as showing the parent, father-son, mother-daughter type relationship, family aspect?
I think they're solid picks. I am naughty, and I've never seen Casablanca. I thought you were going for The Notebook. That was one of my choices.
I thought about it. Yeah.
I have it on my papers. I didn't put a star next
Notebook,
to it.
Casablanca, tomato.
Thing,
But as far as like the parent relationship, I think that it's a good representation. Maybe almost a little muted just because there's no dialogue. I know that that's pretty powerful in itself in the movie, how it showcases it, but I think if we really wanted to showcase that, I think we need to put some words behind it.
Okay. All right. Dan, reaction to that?
Fair enough. I think I'm curious to see what you have regarding that, so we'll see.
I think one of them is going to surprise you, Dan. Amanda, what's your next 2?
Let me look here. Okay, these are probably going to be my weirdest picks.
Well, I love it.
So, I'm going to take it into 1995 with Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything.
Oh. Wow. That was unexpected.
Explain yourself.
This is just showing how gender identity and gender identity roles and... I mean, even if you want to pull in the drag culture, if you want to say that, but I think that this shows really strongly how we we perceive men should be and women should be, and how now in today's society that line is severely blurred. And it's not necessarily how people grew up in the 50s, where men are the breadwinners and they're the strong ones, and women are just kind of meek and mild, or the fact that you're born one gender doesn't mean you're stuck as that gender, no matter how you feel on the inside.
I gotta give you credit. You're pulling out some completely what seems like ridiculous movie choices in like Final Destination and Tu Wong Fu, but you're backing them up with such sound reasoning for why they should be included.
Yeah.
Skills, bro. Skills.
Oh man.
I mean, I think in all of these movies that I pick, I have some kind of nostalgia or rooted emotion in some of them. But my second pick, even weirder, let's say, it's a 2000 film, American Psycho, and it showcases how vain and materialistic we are, and how mental instability can seriously take hold of people, even people who are successful.
Wow.
Nothing.
American Psycho. It's funny because it's interesting looking at the reasons behind I think I was maybe more optimistic and didn't even think of the negative side of humanity. But to be fair, if you're going to represent us, I think that's something you need to certainly consider. And American Psycho will at least make them maybe just decide maybe we don't want to go to that planet after all. Tu Wong Fu, I barely remember that movie. It's been such a long time since I watched it. I thought the thing that came in mind, I didn't even think it. I thought it was just more comedic in that aspect, but I could be wrong. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen it. American Psycho is a great film, no doubt. Christian Bale, kind of probably one of his his breakout roles in Empire of the Sun. But anyways, he's great in that movie. It's a really, really twisted film. So I don't know. Like it's interesting because it's like, do you want? I think it certainly represents exactly what you're saying, but it's like if you're going to send it into space to aliens, do you want them to know that? It's like, do you want let's ease in there, It's like maybe not tell them about the bad stuff. It's like the first date. You don't bring up all your baggage yet. You wait until you've built the relationship, and then you
now you like those films. Watch these. We're gonna have to do a whole nother list one of these times, and we'll frame it with the 10 films we would put up there if we wanted to confuse them the most and keep them guessing. We'll put Fight Club in there and Memento.
I think vanity and materialism is so prevalent in our society, and I think this just kind of puts it in your face and shows you how crazy people can really be when they get wrapped up in that.
I agree exactly. You're very much right. That is very true, and it's a great representation of that. So there's no argument for me there.
All right. My next round, like I said, is going to have some tie-ins to what Dan was saying here, this last one. He said that one of the aspects that he wanted to represent was love, and I definitely wanted that to be present in my list as well. I struggled for some reason, though, coming up with what I considered one of the best examples of love. Obviously, you have love in a lot of different movies represented, so I was trying to think, okay, well, how can I pair this with something else to kind of kill two birds with one stone and not just give them the idea of how important love is to our culture, but add something else with that. My first choice out of the two that I was considering is Casablanca, just like Dan. I thought it like you said, represents the style from that time period, represents the great dialogue and all the different things that Dan already mentioned, so I don't need to repeat that. But so that was the first one that I thought of. The second one I know I would probably get a little bit more adversity to, but the other one that I thought I could tie in somehow was trying to tie in love with something to do with Shakespeare. And something to do with...
Shakespeare in love?
No, it actually wasn't. And I was thinking of Romeo and Juliet specifically because, I mean, that's probably one of the most famous love stories of all time. It represents, a love that... the truest form of love that can't be stopped by anything or, any types of different restraints that a society or a family puts on it. And I thought at the same time that would represent, in my opinion, I know some people hate Shakespeare, some people love him. In my opinion, he's probably one of the best couple, if not the best writer of all time. So I guess that was my way to somehow represent him as well. But like I said, I had Casablanca / Romeo and Juliet, so I would have no problem if Casablanca was the one that we chose to represent love. But so that was where I was going with my first pick of these two. Dan, I don't know if you have any reactions to that.
So I'm sorry, which one did you choose?
I'm fine with either one of them.
So the Romeo and Juliet, which one are you thinking?
I mean, if you already have Casablanca, I'm fine with making my pick Casablanca so that we're in unison.
Yeah.
I do have kind of like a personal want to try to fit some type of Shakespearean film in there. I know the plays and the writing's better than a lot of the adaptations have been to film in certain aspects, but that was my only other consideration in the love angle.
I guess I'll be biased and say I would probably go Casablanca because, like I said, I feel like I agree with you. Shakespeare is certainly a literal, I don't know why I need to say anything about Shakespeare, but if there's, like I said, I don't know if there's a movie that I could think of that represents it as much that is based on Shakespeare, so that's why I went with Casablanca.
Okay. And then I'll let Amanda react to that one after I give my second pick as well. The other thing that you said you were trying to come up with something that represented family and that type of thing. I didn't necessarily have this film in a category that I was using to represent family, but what I did is I had a category that I wanted to kind of find, because there's certain films that we get that span long periods of time and that showcase a lot of different not just time periods in history, but different customs and different ways of thought and advancements or this, that, and the other. So I had a whole slew of films that I was thinking about in this vein that cover time period, and one of them I was thinking of was Pleasantville, because of kind of what it shows as far as the progression throughout that film. Other ones that would come to mind that kind of do similar things would be Forrest Gump, or even you could think of like a Back to the Future film as they kind of jump back and forth between time periods. And the other one that I somehow had linked in there, or lumped in there with those films, even though it maybe you would think doesn't fit the same mold, was Boyhood. And not necessarily because I think it's the greatest movie ever or anything like that, but I think for like what you were saying, it also represents kind of the family dynamic in respect of the complete progression of this kid's life and his relationship with the mom, with the dad, etc. So I was trying to think of something that could kind of span a longer time span. I guess if I was going to go down and pick a specific one out of that, that's like Sophie's choice there, I think. Man, I don't know. I might need your guys' help to try to decide that. I probably would sway more towards a Pleasantville, a Forrest Gump, or a Back to the Future. But that's kind of where I was picking for that slot. I guess if I had to choose, I can't.
I did have Back to the Future as one of my options.
Gotcha.
Not on my list, but as a backup.
Was what I was saying even making sense, Dan, as far as what I was trying to represent with one of those picks?
Yeah, basically, something that kind of is encapsulating of a lifetime or something like that. And when I was hearing you talking, I felt like, well, this sounds kind of like Boyhood, and then you brought it up. So I guess just considering your reasoning, it almost seems like that would best fit what you're saying, and what you want to represent overall. And I would say I like Pleasantville, but I think Boyhood, I don't know if we're thinking quality of film as much, but I would certainly think that over that aspect. But so that would be my inclination, would be going with Boyhood. But again, it's whatever it's your choice. Yeah, so I don't want to. That's basically if I'm completely understanding what you're trying to do,
right. Amanda, what do you think of both the Casablanca, Romeo and Juliet option, or something like Back to the Future or Boyhood or Pleasantville to represent kind of that span of time?
I think that the Romeo and Juliet pick was really good. I think that's one of the most iconic love stories ever. And if we're going to talk about love, I think a lot of people will refer back to Romeo and Juliet. So I think that's a super solid choice. And like I said, I do like the Back to the Future pick. I think that showcases a span of time, but I also think it showcases our obsession with time and how we so crave to manipulate it.
All right. All right, let's see, we each have had 6 picks so far. Dan, what do you got next?
Well, I'm surprised that we have no crossover at this point. I guess that shows you we have someone to choose from, and I'm surprised that this movie has not been mentioned because I thought it would be one of the first. Well, I also wanted a movie that legitimately was just like that fun that you need from film. You know, the adventure, the reason a lot of us fell in love with movies to begin with. And the 2 movies came to my mind regarding this, and they were Star Wars, of course, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think, Raiders of the Lost Ark, for my money, is the best action-adventure film ever made. Star Wars is, one of the best hero stories ever told. It's, Star Wars isn't a movie, it's a movement, so that's why I feel it has to be included in this. And it may be an obvious choice, but it's an obvious choice for a reason. So ultimately, I felt like my list would not be complete without Star Wars, so I have it as my next choice.
I can stop you there because before you give your next one, because my next nomination was, I literally have this written down, Star Wars / Indiana Jones. And for me, like you said, it's about fun. It's about movies as an escape, as just forget about your problems, forget about your world, and be submerged into some other world that's fun, that's epic, that's adventurous. And that's where I was thinking of that one. So I am in complete agreement. I have Star Wars / Raiders of the Lost Ark. And specifically, even though I may think that Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi are the better films, I was specifically thinking more of the original Star Wars New Hope, because I feel like it's more of a standalone, it could be a standalone film on its own.
Yes, I agree. I feel like if you just give Empire Strikes Back, it'd be like, what? I'm confused. Like, I feel like there's something left out, so very much.
So I'm in agreement with that one, but go ahead with your second pick.
My second pick, I know you guys mentioned you didn't consider genre, but I did, because the way I was thinking of it was, if you send like these 10 movies out, the idea maybe that when they finally get to something that maybe humanity is gone. So these are legitimately the last 10 movies ever made. Like, these are the last 10 that exist. So I felt like it was important to have different genres represented, and one of the most important genres ever for film was westerns. Westerns were a huge, they were the superhero movies of their day. There were tons of them made. So I wanted to go with what I feel is the best western ever made, which is Once Upon a Time in the West. Not only do I think it's a great western, I think, again, thinking about considering what it takes to make a great film, what Once Upon a Time in the West shows is how atmosphere plays a huge part. How you don't need dialogue to tell a great story. There's some great dialogue in Once Upon a Time in the West, but a lot of it is done without words, and a lot of it is done with what I think is one of the best scores ever made. So I thought of music in more of a score aspect, so that's why I considered that film. And again, some really great characters as well. So that's why I went with Once Upon a Time in the West and Star Wars.
All right. Well, I obviously, like I said, agree with Star Wars. It didn't make one of my final nominations or one of my final ones that I was going to bring up, but I did have Westerns down as something that I thought possibly could be represented. I ended up not having enough room for it on my list. I went completely personal bias with my Western pick. I'm not necessarily saying it's the best Western of all time or it represents the things that you are able to represent with Once Upon a Time in the West. The one I had jotted down on my paper with my selections was Tombstone, but that's, again, just because my personal love for that film on a completely biased and nostalgic aspect. But I can definitely see where you're going for with that. What do you think of his including a Western and then including just a fun escape adventure like Star Wars?
I think the fun escape is a definite must for the time capsule.
But you would include Harry Potter?
I would make it Harry Potter.
I had Star Wars / Raiders of the Lost Ark / Avengers / Harry Potter / Lord of the Rings.
The question is which Harry Potter, because there's there's
yeah. I mean, kind of going with the originals here, just to keep it clean cut, but solid picks though, I think.
All right, Amanda, what's your next group?
I'm going to go a little bit more feel-good than the last picks, I think. And you guys both had picks that represented love, and I wanted to showcase love as well, and instead of including The Notebook, I chose a 1998 film, Patch Adams. And I think this showcases compassion and love in more aspects than just romantic. It does have romantic love, but it also shows the human nature for people to love other people and want to help other people as well.
All right. And what's your second one?
My second is a 2000 film, Remember the Titans. And I think that our culture, in America, also in Europe, a lot of heavy unity revolves around sports. And I think that Remember the Titans really showcases that unity and also perseverance.
So, Dan, what do you think about Patch Adams and Remember the Titans?
Wow, Patch Adams. I've never seen it, so not to lie, I actually can't really comment on that one. But I will say one other thing with Remember the Titans, at least it also shows race relations, and certainly that's often something to consider as well, and how those are treated. So yeah, I do enjoy Remember the Titans. It's one of my wife's favorite films, so we do watch it a great deal.
There you go.
And it's Denzel, you gotta love Denzel.
Right, you gotta have Denzel represented. I have seen Patch Adams, but I will admit that I need to rewatch Patch Adams because I don't think I've seen it since I was, I don't know, what year did you say that came out?
98.
I think I probably saw that in 98 or 99 and not since. So
it's one of the saddest movies ever.
I will need to rewatch that. So I can't intelligently comment too much on that. But if it's if it's your version of what's representing love, just like Dan had Casablanca, or with me with Casablanca / Romeo and Juliet, I can totally understand that. I definitely considered including a sports film in a way, not just for the genre, but for, sports plays a big part. And it has for a long time in our culture. I couldn't come up with one that I could kind of hone in on. I thought Field of Dreams possibly, and a couple other ones that came to mind, but I couldn't come up with a clear-cut one, so I kind of left it off my list. But I can see your reasoning behind both of those. As for my next round, obviously one of them I already gave with Star Wars, and then with the other one, I also wanted to represent, I thought like with Lion King and Inside Out, I somewhat represented more from the kids' angle. And obviously with some of my other picks, I was representing more mature topics. I am a sucker for coming-of-age films, so I also wanted to conclude something that kind of showed that period of kind of going from a child to an adult and kind of finding identity. And I think identity is something that could be of value as far as how we determine our identity. And so I thought about a couple different ones. I was thinking about Dead Poets Society. I was thinking about Good Will Hunting. I was thinking about, I even had thoughts of like Big, My Girl, Sandlot, School Ties, Dazed and Confused. Those were all kind of films that were circling in my head. But when I came right down to it, I focused in on The Breakfast Club. Just as a film that possibly not only just shows people that are getting ready to go out in the world, but the whole idea of identity and kind of how we either let other people shape it or how we learn to shape our own identity and who we are. So I went with Breakfast Club for my next pick. Dan, thoughts on that?
I mean, John Hughes, of course. So. And I mentioned with Wizard of Oz that there's like a character in there that everyone can kind of represent or relate to, and I certainly with the Breakfast Club you have that as well. So I think that has it certainly also has that good microcosm for all of the high school experience. So I think it's a good pick.
All right, Amanda, thoughts on Breakfast Club?
I've never seen Breakfast Club.
I'm sorry, what did you just
entirety.
say?
You didn't even let me finish. I've never seen it in its entirety. I probably have only seen the scene where they're in detention. That's about
That
it.
is the whole movie.
Okay, well, I've seen some of the movie. I couldn't tell you if it's all of the movie or not then. That's why I don't even remember much of that movie at all. So.
My jaw just hit the floor.
Okay, I'm not 40 years old. I haven't been around. That wasn't my era. I had to go back into that.
All right. We will cover that soon. Dan, your last round of nominations. What do you got?
Man, it's funny. I'm actually kind of thinking about changing them as we're speaking.
Me too.
I think I actually might change one. But I wanted a comedy, and I was going between two. One being Groundhog Day. One, Bill Murray. You need Bill Murray in there someplace. And I think you talk about religion, and Groundhog Day is a religious angle in its own right, and also just the idea of someone finding themselves. I think that's a huge part of it. But I ended up just going with more of a broader but yet classic comedy, and I'm again thinking of movies as a whole, like a genre and also time period. I felt like the silent era was important to represent and, again, show what you can do with it. And my personal favorite person when it comes to director or movie maker at that time was Buster Keaton. And I think the movie that came to mind was The General, his Civil War film that is iconic for just all the incredible train stunts that are done, and it's amazing to watch nowadays, seeing like a 90-year-old film and what they're able to do back then. And a lot of the comedy still holds true today. I think it still can make an audience laugh just as much as today as it did 90 years ago, which is saying a lot. So that's why I went with that, since it's more timeless.
All right. I like the idea of including a comedy. I also like the idea of representing the silent era and kind of what we can do without the need for words at times. So I like that. And what was your final nomination?
See, and I think this is the one I was going to change, and because we talked about religion. I think that's something to represent. The one I was originally going to go with was Rashomon, which is Akira Kurosawa's film. It talks about truth and how, like, basically how we represent it to ourselves, and how it's taking one story from three different perspectives, and how that can change, and how we often lie to ourselves. And I think that the key there being truth, and how hard that is to find. But flipping it and thinking of religion and thinking about a movie that does encompass and kind of review all religions, and there's not many movies that can do it, and I think it does it maybe better than any, and that's The Life of Pi.
Great pick.
The England film, and I think it does have so much in there, especially talking about humanity. I think there's a lot in there to take out of. So, and just perseverance is also another key, and also our relationships with nature, and just not to give away, just what the ending does about religion and why people might actually buy into it and why some may not. So I think if you're going to think of a religious film, I think maybe Life of Pi might be the best representation that you can get, at least on the more positive aspect of it.
Right. No, I think that's a great pick. That's it's something that I didn't come up with. I had on my initial list, and then for some reason I must have missed it when I was going to try to find that religious one. And then as we were talking earlier, I thought, well, I should mention that later on. But I definitely can see that as a more broad example of religion as a whole, and kind of different religions, and why, like you said, why either people subscribe to it or don't. So I think that is an excellent choice. Amanda, any reaction to either of those?
I can't remember liking Life of Pi too much, but I'm just kind of biased on my pick. I think Seven is a great representation of what you can really do with religion, as far as I think what a lot of people do with religion. They warp it for their own needs. But
what about the idea of including a comedy?
But I definitely think a comedy is essential in it, because laughing is really important to humans.
All right. What are your final two nominations?
Okay, these might be my weak links, but I'm still sticking to them. My next pick is from 2012. It's Rise of the Guardians, one of my favorite animated films, and I think it just shows how deep-rooted holidays and tradition are in world culture, not just American culture, and how it's got the embodiment, really, of innocence and purity, which I think is one of those feel-good aspects of humanity. My last pick is from 1996, Had to Do It, Independence Day, and it just shows our fear of invasion by aliens and how we think we can persevere, how we think if aliens come to our planet, we can kick their butts. That's
this
what
is
we
like
think.
your defense. You're like, throw this out there.
You know what, buddy? I got you, bro. Come at me. And then the aliens are going to be like, coming in hot, and, we're really going to get blown up.
Oh, my goodness. I love the rationale and explanation of that one. Dan, reaction to including holidays and traditions, as well as a warning sign to any alien races?
Well, yeah, I'm a little biased because I had an alien pick as myself. So, The Rise of the Guardians, I was not the biggest fan of that movie. Not to... I know. Unfortunately, but if you want to show aliens we can kick butt, Independence Day certainly does that. do they really want Will Smith to go after them and Jeff Goldblum? We can take them down with only a laptop. So I think that would...
Oh, man. I actually went somewhere similar with my next nomination. I wasn't necessarily trying to scare them away from Invading Us, but I thought to put a movie out there that at least represents our desire to learn more about the world, to learn more about the universe, our desire to reach out and travel to space, or our desire as a human race to continuously push the boundaries and kind of continue to find new frontiers to explore, and kind of the explorer side of human nature. So I was thinking of some type of film that could do that. The ones that came to mind were obviously Gravity, Apollo 13, Moon, Interstellar, anything like that that kind of shows us kind of reaching out there, or in a different element, just our interaction with the unknown, like in a movie like E.T. So that's kind of where I was trying to go with this next one. And I guess, man, that's another one that would be hard for me to narrow down.
Going with 2001, is that?
No, I wasn't. That was great. A great way to find that, a way to weave that into the discussion, though. So I mean, but that's kind of like the same. That 2001 would fit the same mold that I'm talking about, as far as showing that aspect of our desire to kind of keep pushing and keep expanding and learn more about what we don't know about. So I don't know if I could pick one out of there that I really think is the best example of that. Maybe Apollo 13, because it's showing more of like the mission aspect of it and the whole thing. But I guess if I was going like with a personal bias, maybe I would throw E.T. on there. So that's where the mindset is. I guess if I have to pick one, I'll go with E.T. But I don't know. Dan, what do you think about that thought process?
I was thinking, if you're thinking of humans showing their capacity to kind of achieve like greatness, I would think Interstellar might actually be your best choice in a way, just because it does kind of go over that, and like our like and talk also about father-daughter relationships. That's also another part of that too. So, considering all the ones you mentioned, I would think that would maybe the best representation of the kind of humans and their ability to kind of overcome and use technology to solve unsolvable problems.
I can see that. I can see that being the line of thought that I should have had. So I'm in agreement. I think that might show what I was trying to show even better. I know I mentioned it, but maybe that's the way to go there. And my other one, like I said, I also wanted to somewhat include music and kind of what part that plays into our life and into society and human nature. Why are you giving me such an evil look?
If you say Whiplash, I swear to Jesus.
No, I wasn't thinking Whiplash, although that's maybe even a better choice.
Yeah.
But again, I thought there's so many films that represent music that maybe I can also slide in a film that shows something else. And this would be, I think this shows a whole lot of things at the same time. This shows, again, human perseverance and the willing to fight for something you believe in. It shows our desire to be free, our desire not to be controlled by others. It shows relationship between mother and daughter, or father and daughter in a way. And it also shows a slice of a certain time period in our history. So
sounds like you're going with Footloose again.
I was just going to say that.
Nope, it wasn't
Footloose.
Footloose pick? So my last pick was Les Mis, actually. I thought of some other musicals that I could possibly do and represent some of the same stuff. Sound of Music came to mind as something that could also represent that family dynamic. But I think just for the number of things that you can get out of Les Mis, that was why I selected that as my final
Every time I hear somebody say Les Mis, I want to punch everybody in the room in the face. It just irritates me so bad.
Why?
I just feel like there's this whole following that's just... I don't even like those people just because of...
Those
how they
people.
act around it. Yeah, you included. And I'm coming at you too, Dan, if you want to get grouped in this. I don't know. I just can't get around the... which one are you going with? Because there's the musical
I'll go with the most
Russell
recent
Crowe.
one with Russell Crowe. And
I fucking hated that. It's so awful. I like the old one with Liam Neeson. I love the old one.
So we're not going to get agreement on this one, Dan.
No.
What do you think of my music selection?
Music, interesting. I did not expect Les Mis to show up, I guess. There's a lot of musicals to go with, I guess. I don't know. I liked Les Mis, but I don't think I liked it nearly as much as you do. It certainly has a great performance with, can't think of her name at the moment. Anne Hathaway, certainly, yes. So, that's certainly a great scene for people to see. So I would say at least...
Like I said, it was more so about what else besides just the musical. Not necessarily not the saying it's like the greatest movie ever, but what other aspects it represents, like with the French Revolution.
I guess it's similar to Shakespeare, where Shakespeare in himself is probably, his work is probably more of an achievement than the movies that came after it, and with Les Mis, probably the musical itself is probably more of an achievement than the movies that represent it or remade it or what have you.
Like I said, I could see something like Sound of Music or Phantom of the Opera, or like you said, maybe with Singing in the Rain, or maybe like what Amanda said with Footloose. But but yeah, that was my thought process, just picking something that included the music genre, but also kind of talked about a couple different things.
Well, whatever, because my comedy choice would have been Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Oh my goodness. All right, so we did not nearly have as much crossover as we thought we might have. Dan, is this one, do you think this suits us better to just put this up for the people to decide on which list we should go with? Or
I think it might be a better way to go, considering I don't know, I don't think we're going to, budge on our picks. And I thought we'd have at least a couple of crossover, but right now I think we had two, Casablanca and Star Wars. So,
yeah.
And not only that, but it felt like what we're thinking of are vastly different. So I don't know if we might be here all night if we try to cut it down.
Right. So maybe it's best to let the people decide which list would best represent film, which ones would best represent the human element on top of that, and that way we don't have to fight with each other too much. But I guess instead of narrowing it down then and kind of doing some more rounds of this, let's go around and give anybody a chance real quick just to talk about anything that maybe they just missed putting on their list, or another aspect that they thought maybe they could represent, but they just didn't have room within those 10 films. Amanda, what else? What were some of the other films that you were considering?
Twister from '96, Human Frailty versus Acts of Nature, I think is a good one to put in there. Let's see what else I got in here. I didn't look through these enough. I had Indian in the Cupboard as another representation of innocence and kind of the coming of age experience, and also like American History X and things like that. So
that's it.
That's all I'm going to go into.
All right. I had a couple other ones that I was thinking of, kind of in the same realm, Dan, that you were thinking of something to kind of represent either the love of making film or the love of watching film. You probably had better examples. The one that I came up with was The Majestic, just to kind of show that angle, but I would say that yours were probably better examples of film overall on top of that. So, but similar thought process there. I also considered Her or Ex Machina as kind of the whole technology and the relationship that humans have with it as more of a modern message, and kind of where we were at. I thought about some different period pieces with, I don't know if period piece is the right word, but more a slice of different times in America or in the world history. Like I said, Les Mis was part of that, but Tombstone, Gangs of New York, Selma, Malcolm X with the different civil rights things. I also thought about justice and how that is come about in human nature, and that's something that could be traced back to the earliest days as far as how we determine punishments or crime, law and order type things. So I was thinking of 12 Angry Men, the classic one, or even something like A Few Good Men, or something to represent that justice element. But like I said, I didn't feel like any of those were strong enough to make my list over some of the stuff that I did include. Dan, what else did you kind of think about?
The other thing I thought about was like Man's Search for Meaning, and there's a lot of movies that I considered for that, which was like Groundhog Day, like I mentioned, also Cool Hand Luke was another one. I also thought of a different documentary, which is like Man on Wire, or even The Seventh Seal, which also gets into religion and death as well. I also considered Grave of the Fireflies, which I think just covers tragedy in a really epic way. And I almost went with a cheat with Three Colors trilogy, just movie that kind of represented how theme and how it can be used and color motifs and like that aspect of how film can be. Not all filmmaking is done through story and in that way, and anything else. I also thought of Raging Bull just because it's a great movie, and no, and just again, just something sports related, cinematography achievement in that aspect, and I think that's pretty much. Oh, and lastly, a movie that just represents tension and the creation of tension, and the two movies that came to mind were The Rages of Fear and Sorcerer. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides the ones I've mentioned already.
Right. I don't know. I think overall, even though we didn't have necessarily a lot of duplicate films, I think we did have. I know Dan, you said we're all coming about this at a different angle, but I think we did have a lot of similar thought processes, a lot of similar like slots that we had, whether it was a movie picked to represent love, or a movie picked to represent comedy, or love of movie, that type of thing. I mean, I think we did have a lot of slots that matched up. We just kind of went with some different selections. But what do you think about the whole process? And I guess what would you want people to be looking for as they try to decide which one of our time capsules should be sent out there?
I personally really enjoyed the whole process a lot. Honestly, I was really looking forward to this and doing this. It was a fun exercise for sure. And I would say for someone to do it, I think it's a very personal thing. So maybe someone create their own and maybe see which ones they consider and choose that way. Or, like I said, I think it's important to think about it, the process of this, that it's you're giving it to someone who's never experienced movies before, so films that best represent that you feel like, okay, these are movies that people should see in order to really appreciate the whole landscape of filmmaking or film or going to the movies or what have you. So.
And Dan, I know you kind of reached out to some people and asked for feedback on what kind of films they would pick, and we kind of framed the question, or you framed it in different ways on Twitter, on Reddit, and a couple different areas. Did you get any responses you wanted to share, or anything that you thought was interesting that you saw from anybody?
Yes, actually. Yeah, we did get a lot of responses. One of the first ones was Brendan Cassidy from In-Session Film. He mentioned Magnolia 2001, like we brought up, The Exorcist, Princess Mononoke, Seven Samurai, a lot of good choices there. I did consider 2001. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I didn't include that. JD from In-Session Film, he indicated that Citizen Kane, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, Princess Mononoke, or Cayuga also, and maybe one more here. And DJ from Simplistic Reviews, maybe more geek-centered licks with Die Hard, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Shawshank Redemption, The Good, Bad, the Ugly, and, of course, The Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, and I think some of those are interesting. I think what steered me away from certain films, even though they might be great examples of certain things and maybe at a lot of people's top films of all time, I couldn't find a reason to include a film like Pulp Fiction, even as great of a film as that is, as we've talked about recently. And that's just one example, but there's a lot of films that I have in my own personal either favorite films or top films of all time that I couldn't justify putting in with the way we framed it.
I guess I should say, too, the way I framed it on Twitter was, if movies were all going to get destroyed, you can only say 5. And that's kind of the way I thought of it, too. Like I said, if you're sending these off to space and humanity's gone and these are the 10 left. So that might, just the way you frame it may change your responses.
Yeah, that's true. And on Reddit, you got a lot of responses, and some that we brought up here. So we have mentions for Schindler's List, Passion of the Christ, and Lion King, the first one. I guess they were somewhat in line with me. Boyhood is on there. That was on one of ours. Forrest Gump again, Schindler's List again.
The Son of Mask, apparently. Someone listed that.
You had Alien 3, so that's almost along the same line. E.T., Notebook got a mention, American History X. We talked about Schindler's List again. Star Wars on there. So, I mean, a lot of some Boyhood, Dazed and Confused, Schindler's List, E.T. again. So some people somewhat in line with some of our picks, or at least along the same lines. Hoop Dreams even at the end. One of your picks, Dan, getting mentioned as well. So a lot of great picks out there. And like you said, some of it's going to be personal choice. Some of it's going to be based on your experiences and what you're trying to represent. Amanda, what did you think about the whole process and trying to come up with this list? And what should people be considering when we're framing the question the way we are?
I think this was a really interesting process, and it definitely made me take a different perspective look at some of the films that I've known and loved and experienced myself. So I think what Dan said earlier, that it's a personal experience, is definitely true, because you have your own feelings about being human and what it means to be a person. So what you're going to take into this is going to be different. And as far as representing film, I think that it is another monster in itself as well.
And Amanda, I think you'll like this comment on Reddit as well. If I can, here it is. Only one movie, Independence Day. Make sure them aliens know not to mess with us. So we got that going for us.
Come at me, bro.
So definitely a fun experience. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation as well, and we're coming up with your own list at the same time. Like we've said 300 times now, you can go to the website and find each one of our lists and click on which one you think we should send off into space to represent us and the film process overall. I think that's it for the main attraction. Dan, do you have any time to go over? Did you get to watch your homework assignment, or did you want to save that for the next episode?
I know you guys said you might have to go, so I don't know if you had to head out or.
Oh no, we got it. We got enough time to keep going. So why don't you go ahead with either anything that you've been watching recently that you'd want to highlight, or the homework assignment from a couple weeks ago.
I did see the homework assignment. I'll get that maybe last, but
okay.
Just the one thing I did want to mention, I did see the most recent. We did talk about it already, but the most recent Mission Impossible film, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and I ended up, I know, Amanda, you were not a fan, but I gotta say, I really liked it. I thought if it wasn't for Mad Max, it would, for me, be the best action film of the summer. I thought the story was crisp and well told, and I thought the kinship with all the characters was well done, and I also thought the action set pieces within themselves were varied and well executed, from the opening to the great opera sequence. I love the underwater sequence. The motorcycle chase was fantastic. Even on a technical aspect, I thought the sound was really great. I think that really, especially when it came to the motorcycle chase, worked really well. Is it to me like the level of something like, does it transcend its genre? No, I think it's formulaic in that aspect, but I think looking at the past Mission Impossibles, they can be kind of very convoluted, and this one was, but still it was able to balance it, I think, and also had one of the better characters, female representation characters within this franchise. So I really ended up liking it. So I thought it was a fun time.
Where do you think it stacks in the franchise, and what grade would you give that one?
I still think Ghost Protocol is number one for me. And it was, I go back and forth with, to me, it's like 3 and 2. This and 3, I think I like 3 a little bit more just because of, I think the villain's stronger, and I think there's more of emotion to it, and a little bit more, I liked a little bit, it had a little bit more humor, and I think this one had some, but not as much as I was looking forward to. So I would rank it third within the franchise, after 4, 3, and then this one. And I would give it a 7.5 for a grade.
And Amanda, obviously, if people want to hear your in-depth thoughts of this, they can tune in to last week's episode of the True Bromance podcast and hear you and Barry and Hyro kind of go into depth and into detail on that. But kind of sum up your thoughts on the film, and where I forget where you landed on it for a grade.
I think I ended up giving it, after discussion, a 5. I dropped down from a 6. I recently rewatched all of the Mission Impossible movies to see where this one was going to stack up, and I just don't feel like it was completely in line with the other ones. I think this one wasn't the best. I don't think it was the worst, but I don't think it was the best. I think it didn't have the awesome gadgetry, and it had the same kind of tired jokes with Benji as it did before. And don't get me wrong, I really do like Simon Pegg. And I don't agree that the relationships were as well done in this one. I thought they were done better in the last one with the same group with IMF. I think that there was some humor that did work with Jeremy Renner and Alec Baldwin. But as far as this one, I found myself looking at the time a lot, so I was a little bored with it.
Yeah, I'm going to be somewhere in the middle between you two, I guess, actually, which is weird. I'm usually on one of the extremes. But I think my thought process with this one is I guess, falls in line with my thought process on the whole franchise. It's just not a franchise that I can get excited about, but I still enjoy all the films. Like, I enjoy the films. They're a fun ride. They're a fun adventure. I find the gadgetry and the technological aspect fun. I find the action set pieces, like Dan was saying, engaging. But it's not something that I just kind of really get excited about, and that's not anything to say about the actual film or the quality there. That's just me personally. It's not my cup of tea as far as this genre. I'd much rather watch a Bond film or a Bourne film if Matt Damon's involved. So it's more of a personal bias for me, but I think I still probably would give this one right around a 6.5, because I think it was a little bit it was above average. It was still, like Dan was saying, as far as what we've been getting, as far as action films, I think it ranks pretty high. I can see where you're coming with being a little bit bored with it, and some of the believability. I know that's not something that you should really consider in this, but gets to me a little bit. So
believability, man. It's
I know.
To me, I don't know. To me, movies can build their own logic.
They can build their own logic, but then that car flipped like 17 times, and there's no one that survives that.
I guess, but I don't know. That's just you can.
That's the part that I don't believe. Like, I can believe all the different, all the crazy gadgetry, and that we're going to set this world up so that you can have this crazy device that does this insane thing that's out of this world, and I'll believe that. Like, I can believe all that. It's when we defy the laws of physics and logic to say that you're going to be in a car, it's going to flip 17 times, and you're going to walk out of there, or that you're going to hold your breath for what really in reality was about 6 minutes, it seemed like, and then come out, and all you need is a quick hit with the defibrillator.
Which they happen to have.
Well, I mean, they were prepared for it, so I mean, they knew that was not a possibility, I guess. But that's the believability that I have more of an issue. You could come up with, like I said, the face-changing thing and all those, and I'm fine, because that's the world you've created. It's more of do we really have to have the car flip 17 times and go that angle?
I don't know. To me, that's 3 seconds, and I think it does fit very much in line with the movie that is created. I mean, these are clearly like larger-than-life superhero characters, and I feel like if that argument can be used for pretty much every action film where you have people overcoming things they should never be able to overcome, even in the Bourne franchise, like it's just he is in a car that's basically flipped, is on top of a freaking parking garage and comes down. Like, that's that's just as
I think that's my problem with the whole genre. I'm not a huge action buff because of that. I don't know. I struggle with it.
I don't know. I guess I have believability issues with Les Mis, I guess. I don't know. No one talks that way.
Good touche. But like I said, I am higher on the film than Amanda, probably just a smidge, and just a tiny bit lower than you, Dan, somewhere right in the middle. But I think it's worth a watch. I think anybody that likes the Mission Impossible series should watch this, because I do think it ranks towards the top. So I think this, like you said, probably this one, the last one, and then maybe the first one for me would be my top three. So I definitely think it's worth a watch. What else did you see this week, Dan?
The other thing I was talking about real quick before I get to the homework were two documentaries that I ended up quite liking. One's available on Netflix, one's on Amazon. The first one on Netflix is Tig. It's a documentary that it covers the life of, not the complete life, but Tig Notaro, who is an alternative comic who kind of became infamous, or maybe became notable a few years ago when the day she found out she had breast cancer, she actually went on stage at Largo and she did a set, and it became this infamous set, and like there was a lot of people there, Louis C.K. and a few other comedians, and it kind of blew up, and she became, and kind of she didn't basically become famous overnight because she's been a comedian for a while, but it certainly upped her fame, and it kind of go over her life and the struggles that she was facing with her health, and there was a lot of things going up to that moment, and her trying to also now, after she's kind of had to deal with this increased notoriety, how does she deal with it? How does she stay within comedy? And like, that's what people are expecting her, making jokes about having to deal with cancer, but she doesn't want to be known as that person. So there's a lot of struggles going on, and I've seen a lot of a lot of documentaries about stand-ups, and most of them are about people trying to find fame. And this has this, but also really has a huge human element. And I don't know, Tig Notaro, it's very much like her comedy. It's raw, it's honest, but it's able to not become too melodramatic by using its comedy. So I ended up really liking that a lot. I'd probably give it 8, 8.5, and I legitimately think it has a chance of making my top 10 documentaries of the year, because it was very personal. It was really, I would highly recommend that. And the other one is a lot different, and it's this movie that I almost didn't watch it because the poster work is so ridiculous. It's a movie called Kung Fu Elliot. And I didn't, and then I realized it was a documentary, so that's ended up why I'm watching it. And it's a movie about this guy, Elliot, who is a Canadian filmmaker, and I use filmmaker loosely. he's trying to become like the first Canadian action star, and let's just say that he his heart's in the right place, but his movies are pretty bad. And it starts. I don't know if you ever saw the documentary American Movie, but it's about these guys who are trying to make movies who maybe they're eccentric and they put a lot of time in it. It's legitimately ruining their lives. And somewhat like that, it starts off this guy who, like, he maybe has a bloated self-image of himself. He thinks he's making these great films, but they're clearly, like, they're not quite good. But it becomes something a lot more emotionally disturbing, and as you find out more about this guy and and who he truly is. So it was good to be surprised by a documentary, or one that kind of turned the table a little bit. Some might have an issue with the ethics of it because there's information they purposely withheld until like the final act of it. So it's certainly the documentarians playing with that in that way. So, but I too would really recommend that as well. I'd probably give not nearly as high as take, so it's more around a 7, but certainly worth a watch if you like documentaries.
All right, so good movie week for you overall. Did that continue or not when it came to your homework?
The Loved Ones.
And what did you watch? And for your homework,
you assigned me The Loved Ones. And have you watched this movie? I'm curious.
Absolutely not.
Okay, because I'm like, I could not imagine you watching this movie. It is, man, I would say it's best to go in this not knowing anything, because I didn't know anything, and it was unlike anything I think I've watched in quite a while. It's such a oddball movie. It's hard to even indicate what genre it was in. It's it's like you said, it's like an indie horror comedy. It kind of reminded me of like the tone of the Heathers from the 80s, and it's a little bit dark and comedic. Like I said, I think I don't want to. It's been a little bit since I've seen it, so I can't really go in great detail. But I thought it was interesting, but it was kind of one note for me, and it was maybe not my cup of tea, honestly. It sticks within. It says some cool things about the genre that it's in, but I don't know. It's not for me for sure. So I think for an effort, I would give it certainly a 6 out of 10.
Okay, fairly high score for.
Again, 6 out of 10 is barely passing. That's the lowest grade you can get for passing for me. So 5 out of 10 is failing. So that's just
right
to explain that.
Okay, getting into a couple of films that we watched this week. I think we saw, outside of the homework and the Mission Impossible, which we already talked about, we saw 4 films. Amanda, you might have another one you can add if we don't get to it. But I watched, you've already seen it in theater, Amanda, but I watched Home, the animated film from early on in the year. And I will just say that I think people were a little bit too hard on this film when it came out and kind of just writing it off, or maybe not even seeing it. I don't know. I don't think this film was that bad. I can kind of understand what Amanda is coming for with all the praise that she's given the film. I think it's fun. I think visually it's something to look at. I think it has some decent themes. I think it has some decent humor moments in it. So I actually enjoyed that more than I thought I was going to, and would probably give that right around like a 7 out of 10, because I actually had more fun with it than I expected to have. So that was one that I had saw for the first time. Now, we both watched Run All Night with Liam Neeson. Amanda, what did you think about that one?
I liked it more than I thought I was going to like it, I think. How it was, the cinematography in this was really cool. I thought I liked how they showed the kind of shift from what part of the town that they were in to the part of the town that they were going to be focusing on next, as far as where different characters were or where they were heading. I thought it was shot really cool, or edited, if you want, really cool. As I think it was really awesome seeing Liam Neeson in a little bit different of a role. I mean, he wasn't together as he is in other movies. He wasn't, he wasn't the all-around good guy in this film, and I liked it. I also thought that the father-son relationship was pretty cool. I liked it. I would give it I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. I think this had more potential than it ended up living up to. I think it could have benefited from somebody doing a once-over on the script, or a once-over to kind of erase some of the bad parts to it, like a little proofreading maybe, would have been decent on the whole screenplay. But I think it was more fun than I thought. I thought it was going to be a piece of garbage, and it ended up being at least somewhat entertaining, minus some major plot holes and major problems that I had with the film. But I was able to look past most of it to have some fun, so I'd probably give this one right around like a 5.5, 6. It's, if you like that genre, if you like Liam Neeson, I think you'll have fun with it, and just kind of put the blinders on to some of the stuff that doesn't make as much sense. We also saw The Water Diviner with Russell Crowe. I was looking forward to this one, and I actually really enjoyed this film. There are a lot of analogies you can draw to some stories in the Bible, especially with Job, and there's some thematic things that are pretty resonant for me. I mean, I guess you got to get past some of the water diviner aspects of it, and how Russell Crowe is able to locate water amongst other things in the film. But I actually really enjoyed this film. I don't know if you felt the same way or not, Amanda.
I thought it was pretty heartbreaking. I think that all the characters were pretty well played. I think there were some great performances that came out of this. Like you said, the whole actual water diviner aspect was a little odd, but I don't think they played too heavily on it, so it was tastefully done, I'd say. I think I did like this a little bit more than I thought I was going to as well. I'm going to give it a 5 or 6. I don't think it was great, but I definitely got the feels a few times. And
it also includes one of the most annoyingly off-putting moaning scenes I think I've ever seen in film.
Wow.
I don't know.
Are there a lot of those
right
off-putting moaning scenes? Should we do a top 5 next week?
That's a good list for somebody to do. It's not me, though. But there's one scene where there's some sound making coming out of one of the individuals that is very extended, and it's very off-putting. But,
I know what you're talking about.
But I like I said, I got a lot out of this film.
He wasn't moaning. He was crying.
Well, same thing. It was a sound. It was an audible noise coming out of him.
It was awful. I think it was heart-wrenching. I don't think it was... Are you saying it was annoying?
Away. No, it was just hard to listen to.
It was hard to get through, definitely.
But I am probably a little higher than you are on this one. I think in a rewatch maybe I'll find some more problems with it, but my initial reaction was pretty good to it, so I'll give this one a 7.5 out of 10 for me. And then the last one for us, outside of the homework, was, we haven't talked about it yet, I don't think, which was What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, yes.
Amanda, I will let you start.
Oh, I think this is one of my new favorite movies. It was amazing. Everything that... Okay, so I went into this only mildly knowing that it was about vampires. And I love everything about vampires. And the comedy in this movie, everything about their vampire-like nature, it was perfect. I think Hyro from True Romance did not like this movie at all, but
I think he said he was creative and whatnot. He didn't think it was funny.
I thought it was hilarious. I laughed hardcore throughout this film. There was just a ton about this movie that I liked. I don't even know how to get into it. Dan, I can't
remember. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, it was in my top 5 of the year so far.
That's right. I thought you had listed that.
God, it's freaking hilarious.
We're all three in agreement like that, because I think you mentioned too, Dan, during that discussion that if you like the Flight of the Conchords humor, that you're probably going to like this. And yeah, this was a home run for me as well. And I don't even like vampires that much or movies about them, but I thought the humor was on point. I laughed quite a bit, and I can definitely see why everybody's listing this on different top lists as far as the halfway point, and I think this creative, unique, funny all goes well together in this, and some good performances, and I'm on board with all of you guys. I think we're in unison on this one. What score would you give this one, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. No, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10.
All right, so 10 out of 10 from Amanda. I will probably give it, I'll give it an 8.5? 8.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. So great reviews for What We Do in the Shadows. And then our homework assignment was a film called The Trip with Steve Coogan. And Amanda, you go first. What was your reaction to The Trip? Now, obviously this was something that Dan listed in his comedy choices from last week, and I think a couple people had said both on the website in reaction to our top 10 comedy, as well as kind of some comments that Barry had about the other film. What was the other film that he said he had seen? I can't remember the name of it now.
With Steve Coogan.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the other one. But he didn't have rave reviews about that. And obviously, a person on the website said they couldn't believe Dan listed The Trip. It wasn't funny at all. I think we would disagree with that. But what was your take, Amanda, on The Trip?
I was pleasantly surprised. I think I did find myself getting a little bored here and there, but it definitely, like you guys said, they're dueling Michael Caine's. I ate that up every time. I think that the impressions were what did it for me. I don't think everything else that was going on I really cared about, honestly. I couldn't really invest in Steve Coogan's plight. I felt kind of disconnected from that, and I didn't really care to feel anything, even when he was, saying, I'm not going to be in America for 7 years, I want to be with my kids. I really didn't see him really wanting to be with his kids, kind of doing this obligatory trying to connect with his kids. And then the relationship with the love interest, I'm like, why is this chick even with him? He's hideous. And she's young and, living life in L.A. or Vegas or wherever she was at. So it's kind of unbelievable for me in that. But I think the relationship, the two, shaky friendship that they had, I think that was the best part for me. And I definitely laughed a few times. I think more than Kevin. I think he was looking at me at one point, and I think he was a little shocked that I was enjoying it as much as I was. I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
I think I laughed more than you think I did.
He doesn't.
I don't laugh out
outwardly
loud a
laugh.
lot, so it's hard to tell when I think something's funny because I usually don't show it. But I think this did have a lot of clever moments, a lot of humorous moments. So whoever was saying that there was no comedy involved in this and that it was just whatever they said it was on the website, I would disagree with that slightly. I think, like you said, the dueling Michael Caine's, a lot of the voice impressions were funny, but there was other funny aspects surrounding the movie too, especially with a lot of like the dinner conversations that they were having.
I didn't even touch on the food. I felt like I should be. I wasn't even hungry, but I was like, I need to be eating this whole time. That food just looked delicious. Everything they were eating.
But I mean, I can kind of see also what you're saying a little bit with some of the times that you may be looking at your watch or wondering, as far as pacing or time, I wouldn't say boring. I don't think that's the right word, but I think there would be some people that would have a problem with the level of engagement that they might have with the film. I mean, I think, Dan, you'd say too, it's not necessarily for everybody, but
no,
I think for those,
not at all.
Yeah, but I think for people that enjoy that type of comedy, I think there is something there. And like I said, I think we both laughed more than we expected to based on the comments that we were reading in reaction to it being on your list. I think it was a funny film, and I'm glad we watched it because I don't think I've seen anything of Steve Coogan. So that was kind of my first exposure to that. So I would also give it a 6 out of 10. Which is higher, Dan, than your 6 out of 10, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, it's great on a curve.
All right. So, before we close out and end this marathon that we've had here, any homework that you had for us for this next week?
I wanted to give some more options too. So
I'm going to let Amanda pick this time.
Okay.
Oh man.
So
the pressure's on.
I was trying to find something that I thought Amanda would like, but I honestly couldn't find anything.
Nothing else that Melissa McCarthy hasn't done yet.
I couldn't. Honestly, just on Netflix, I could feel like it would. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Anyway, so these are the ones I came up with. One film is a choice that's starring one of the current stars of Fantastic Four that came out this weekend. Another is a foreign remake of a classic American Western, a recent remake. And one's a highly acclaimed documentary, and one is a movie simply starring a person we talked about not too long ago with Ant-Man and Paul Rudd.
Where are you going, Amanda?
Let's go, Paul Rudd.
Have you seen Prince Avalanche?
No.
I have not.
All right. Yes, it's I guess somewhat comedic, but it's basically him and Emil Hirsch, and that's pretty much it. So, curious to hear what you have to say about that.
So we will watch Prince Avalanche for the next week. Dan, I gave you some choices last week, and again, I'm going to continue the theme just a little bit more. I know some of these are going to be maybe outlandish, some of them not, but the reason I'm giving you films that I haven't seen either is mainly, well, number one, to make you the guinea pig.
I appreciate that.
But number two, because again, these are all movies that are above a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
and I think the Love one was 95% because there's like 4 reviews of it. So that's just
yes, I know I'm cheating a little bit with that.
I thought it was a bad movie, but I'm glad.
But yeah, it had a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and so I have a few more that have some pretty high marks on there. So I want to see if they're as high as they're saying they are, or if it's like you're saying, it's just because not enough people have reviewed them. So I have still left on my list. I have a dramedy. I have a drama/mystery suspense, or just a straight drama, and we have they're all 2010, 2012, or 2014. So.
Are any of them currently streaming? Because I'm going to get lazy.
That is a good question.
If you don't know, that's fine. I could figure.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Let's go with you said one was a mystery,
and I will try to make sure I know that for the future, so you don't have to keep working to try to get these. Yes, one of them is a mystery/suspense.
Let's go with that one.
All right, that one is from 2012. It currently holds a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. 100% from critics. It is a drop, but not that big of a drop compared to the other ones. All the other ones go down into the 70s when it comes to audience. This one only goes down to 85. So 100 from critics, 85 from the audiences, and that's a 2012 film, and it's called Wake and Fright.
Okay.
Wake and Fright. If that is impossible to come by, I will send you a new one between now and the next episode that you can stream on Netflix.
Okay. I'll see if I can find it. Wake and Fright.
All right. And if not, like I said, I have a couple backups that we can use just in case, because I am being ridiculous here. Not intentionally. I'm just curious because, as we come up with our top films of the last 5 years, I've started digging through some of all the, and there's a lot of highly scored ones on Rotten Tomatoes that I don't know much about. So I'm interested to see if I'm missing something out there. So we'll let you be the guinea pig again, and then you can pay me back next week with your homework assignment.
A Serbian film. Yeah.
A Serbian film. I've heard the reviews on that one from first-time watchers. I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, I've never watched it, nor will I ever. So.
Okay. For anybody that's still listening, obviously coming out as we speak in the theaters would be Fantastic Four, Ricky and the Flash, and The Gift. We also have Hot Pursuit and Unfriended coming out on Blu-ray here this week. So something to definitely look for, as August is full of nothing to watch when it comes to Blu-ray and DVD and rentals. So as far as the question for this week, it just has to do with you answering the poll on the website of which time capsule you would send out of the 3 of ours. We'll put up the official list there when this episode goes live. Dan, anything else before we close out the show? What do we got coming on the next Tarantino film?
We will have the next Tarantino film that will be Death Proof, which will be an interesting discussion, as in it's regarded as maybe his least achievable film. So that'll be coming up shortly, and then we have a couple more, and we'll almost be done. So we've been getting a lot of recommendations for what to do next, and I guess we'll certainly have to talk about those. So.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to Cinema Geeks this week. You can contact us in a bunch of different ways. Most of all, you can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, and find the episode post and comment there. That's the best way to interact with the actual episodes. As far as getting to know what we're doing or what the network is doing, that's the best way is to go to the Facebook page, Geekcast Radio Network. And the best way to interact with us individually is through Twitter. The show there is Cinema Geekcast. Dan, your Twitter is?
At Movie Revolt.
Amanda, yours?
Hard Candy Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
And mine is at Optimus Solo. So that is it for us. Thanks for tuning in for this extra large size episode. Be sure to check in next week for your next chance to listen to more from the Cinema Geeks.